I stood in my sister Madison's grand ballroom, blood dripping from my nose onto my blue dress. 200 guests stared in silence as Madison, the newly crowned Entrepreneur of the Year, gripped my hair, dragging me toward the exit. Our mother, Eleanor, sat at the head table wine glass, raised a satisfied smile playing on her lips. My phone vibrated in my pocket, the recording app still running, capturing every word, every sound. I knew this was the moment everything changed forever. 3 weeks before that nightmare evening, I sat at my desk in the Financial Crimes Division scrolling through emails when Madison's name appeared in my inbox. An official invitation to her Entrepreneur of the Year ceremony sent through her assistant, not even a personal note. I stared at the elegant digital card with its gold lettering and felt that familiar ache in my chest. Madison had always been the star of our family. Growing up in our suburban home in Arlington, Virginia, she collected achievements like other kids collected baseball cards. Valedictorian at Washington High, captain of the debate team. Homecoming queen, full scholarship to Harvard for her MBA. Her photo still hung in our old high school's Hall of Fame, that perfect smile beaming down at current students. I took a different path. While Madison dazzled everyone with her charisma and ambition, I found comfort in numbers and patterns. At George Mason University, I discovered my talent for forensic accounting. There was something satisfying about following money trails, uncovering hidden transactions, finding the truth buried beneath layers of deception. My professors said I had an exceptional eye for detail, an intuition for spotting irregularities that others missed. But in the Montgomery family, my quiet success meant nothing. Eleanor, our mother, had made her preference clear since we were children. Sunday dinners were performances where Madison's latest accomplishments took center stage, while my work with the federal government was dismissed with a wave of Eleanor's manicured hand. Alberta works with numbers. She would tell her friends at the country club, her tone suggesting I counted pennies at a bank. The truth was far more interesting. As a senior forensic accountant with the FBI's white-collar crime division, I investigated multi-million-dollar fraud cases. My work had put corrupt executives behind bars, recovered stolen funds for defrauded investors, and protected countless victims from financial predators. But Eleanor only had eyes for Madison's glossy magazine covers and TED Talk appearances. I was about to delete the invitation when my boss, special agent in charge, Robert Sullivan, appeared at my cubicle. His expression was grim, the kind of face he wore when a case was about to get complicated. "Alberta, we need to talk about Celestial Innovations," he said quietly. My blood ran cold. Celestial Innovations was Madison's company, the tech startup she had built into a $100 million empire in just 5 years. The media loved to feature stories about her innovative approach to sustainable technology and her inspiring journey as a female founder in Silicon Valley. "What about it?" I managed to ask, though I already knew this conversation would change everything. Robert closed my office door and sat down across from me. "We've received multiple whistleblower complaints, allegations of investor fraud, manipulated financial statements, phantom customers. The preliminary investigation suggests this goes deep Alberta. We're talking about potentially $50 million in fabricated revenue." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. "You want me to investigate my own sister?" "I want to assign someone else, but you're the best we have. You know how these tech startups operate, and you have the skills to unravel complex financial schemes." He paused, studying my face. "If you're not comfortable, I'll understand. But Alberta, if these allegations are true, a lot of innocent people are going to lose everything." I thought about all those Sunday dinners, all those moments of being overlooked and dismissed. Part of me wanted to refuse to protect the family name despite everything, but I had taken an oath when I joined the Bureau. My duty was to the truth and to protecting victims, not to family loyalty. "I'll take the case," I heard myself say. Robert nodded, pulling out a thick file. "Everything we have so far is in here. Remember, this is strictly confidential. No one outside the investigation team can know, especially not your family." That night, I spread the documents across my dining room table. Financial statements, investor presentations, employee testimonies. The deeper I dug, the clearer the pattern became. Celestial Innovations was built on lies, customer contracts that led to shell companies' revenue projections based on deals that existed only on paper technology, patents that were slight modifications of existing innovations claimed as groundbreaking discoveries. My phone buzzed. Derek's name appeared on the screen. We'd been dating for 6 months, meeting at a financial crimes conference where he was covering the event as a business journalist. He was one of the few people who understood my work, who saw the importance of what I did. "Hey, you sound stressed," he said when I answered. "Bad day at the office." I wanted to tell him everything to share the burden of what I had discovered, but I couldn't. Just a complicated case. Family stuff is also weighing on me. Madison's big award ceremony is coming up. The one where your mom will spend the entire night comparing you to her. You don't have to go, Alberta. You don't owe them anything. His words were comforting, but he didn't understand the full picture. Now, I wasn't just Madison's overlooked sister. I was the federal agent assigned to investigate her empire of lies. And somehow I would have to face her at that ceremony, pretending everything was normal while knowing I held her future in my hands. As I stared at the evidence before me, my phone buzzed again. Another email from Madison's assistant reminding me to RSVP for the ceremony. I was about to ignore it when I noticed something strange. The subject line had been modified. Instead of just "Reminder RSVP for award ceremony," it now read "Reminder RSVP for award ceremony. Urgent." Why would Madison's assistant mark a simple reminder as urgent, unless it wasn't really from the assistant at all? I pulled up the email headers, a skill I'd learned during my digital forensics training. The sender's IP address didn't match Celestial Innovations' corporate network. Someone had spoofed the assistant's email address. But who would go to such trouble just to make sure I attended Madison's ceremony? The answer came as I cross-referenced the IP address with our case files. The email had been sent from Eleanor Montgomery's home computer. Our mother was personally ensuring I would be at that ceremony, and she was trying to hide her involvement. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the truth. This wasn't just about Madison's fraud. Eleanor was involved too, and my attendance at that ceremony was part of their plan. But what exactly were they planning? And more importantly, why did they specifically need me there? 2 days after discovering Eleanor's hidden involvement, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Madison's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it, shocked. My sister hadn't called me directly in over 2 years. Our communication usually went through Eleanor or consisted of obligatory holiday text messages. Alberta. Her voice sounded different, strained, and oddly formal. "I hope I didn't wake you." I was getting ready for work. I lied, not mentioning I'd been awake all night reviewing financial documents that painted her company as an elaborate Ponzi scheme. "Listen about my awards ceremony next week. I really need you to be there. It's important for the family image, you understand. The press will notice if my only sister doesn't attend." There was something rehearsed about her words, as if she were reading from a script. Madison had always been calculating, but this felt different, desperate. "I already received the invitation," I said carefully. "I'm planning to come." "Good. That's good." A pause stretched between us. In the background, I heard what sounded like Eleanor's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. "Make sure you dress appropriately. This is a black tie event, Alberta. I can send you money for a proper dress if you need it." The insult was vintage Madison suggesting I couldn't afford appropriate clothing on my federal salary. But there was no real venom in it, just hollow meanness, like she was going through the motions of our usual dynamic. "I can manage, thanks." "Alberta." She started to say something, then stopped. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "Just be careful, okay? Things aren't always what they seem." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I set the phone down, my investigator's instincts on high alert. Madison never told me to be careful. She never showed concern for my well-being. And that phrase, "things aren't always what they seem," felt like a warning. That evening, I met Derek at our usual coffee shop in Georgetown. He was already there when I arrived, laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he concentrated on whatever story he was crafting. When he saw me, his face lit up with that crooked smile that had first caught my attention. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, closing his laptop and pulling out the chair beside him. "Madison called me this morning. Personally, first time in 2 years." Derek's eyebrows rose. "Let me guess she wants to make sure you'll be at her coronation to play the supportive sister for the cameras." "Something like that." I wrapped my hands around the warm coffee mug he'd ordered for me. But there was something off about the conversation. She seemed scared. Madison scared. Derek shook his head. "From what you've told me, your sister doesn't do scared. She does confident, manipulative, and cruel, but not scared." I wanted to tell him about the investigation, about the fraud I'd uncovered, about Eleanor's strange involvement with the invitation, but the words stayed locked behind my professional obligations. Instead, I said, "She told me to be careful, that things aren't always what they seem." Derek leaned forward, journalist instincts clearly engaged. "That's definitely not normal sister behavior. What do you think she meant?" "I have no idea." It wasn't entirely a lie. While I knew about the financial crimes Madison's warning suggested, something else was at play, something I hadn't uncovered yet. "You know," Derek said slowly, "I've been working on a series about corporate fraud in tech startups. There's been a pattern lately, family-run companies where the fraud goes deeper than just cooked books. Sometimes there are other crimes hidden underneath the financial ones." My pulse quickened. "What kind of crimes?" "Blackmail, mostly. Sometimes threats of violence. In one case, I'm investigating the CEO was being controlled by someone who had dirt on them, forced to commit fraud to protect darker secrets." He studied my face. "Your sister's company wouldn't happen to be one of those startups built on family connections, would it?" I forced myself to take a calm sip of coffee. Madison's success is all her own. She never let family help with anything. Another partial truth. Madison had refused my help, but had always been suspiciously close to Eleanor's wealthy social circle. That night, back in my apartment, I decided to examine the physical invitation more carefully. It had arrived by courier in an expensive envelope, the kind of thick cream-colored paper that whispered old money. I'd barely glanced at it before dismissing it as just another example of Madison's need to impress. Now I studied every detail. The envelope felt heavier than it should for a single invitation. I carefully felt along the edges and noticed a slight bump along the bottom seam. Using a letter opener, I delicately separated the layers of paper. A small folded note fell onto my desk. The handwriting was shaky, completely different from Madison's usual perfect script. Just 2 words: "Help me." I stared at the message, my mind racing. This wasn't the confident, cruel sister who had tormented me for years. This was someone in trouble, someone desperate enough to hide a plea for help in an invitation she knew would be scrutinized by others. But helped with what, the fraud investigation, or something else entirely? I photographed the note and the envelope, then carefully refolded it and tucked it into my investigation file. Whatever game Madison and Eleanor were playing, it was more complex than simple financial fraud. My sister was trapped in something, and despite all the years of pain between us, she was reaching out to the one person she knew could uncover the truth. The next morning, I pulled Madison's personal financial records, using my federal authority to dig deeper than I had before. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 years ago, right around the time Celestial Innovations received its first major investment, Madison had liquidated her entire trust fund, the one our grandmother had left us. But the money hadn't gone into her company. It had vanished into a series of offshore accounts controlled by Montgomery Financial Holdings, a company registered in Eleanor's name. Madison hadn't built her empire on her own merit. She'd been bankrolled by Eleanor, and now Eleanor owned her. Every success, every achievement, every moment of glory Madison had enjoyed came with strings attached to our mother's controlling hands. I thought about all those years of Eleanor praising Madison while dismissing me. Had it all been an act? Had Eleanor been grooming Madison for this exact purpose, turning her into a perfect puppet for financial crimes while keeping me at arm's length to avoid suspicion? The truth was starting to emerge, but I needed more evidence. I needed to understand the full scope of Eleanor's plan and why my presence at the awards ceremony was so crucial. Most importantly, I needed to figure out if Madison's plea for help was genuine or just another manipulation in a game I was only beginning to understand. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The ceremony is more than it seems. Trust no one, not even those asking for help. A friend." I stared at the message, wondering who else knew about the web of deception surrounding my family. Someone was watching someone who knew enough to warn me. But in a game where even my sister's desperate plea could be a trap, how could I know who to trust? One thing was certain. I would attend that ceremony, but I wouldn't be going as the overlooked sister Eleanor and Madison expected. I would be going as federal agent Alberta Montgomery, armed with evidence and ready to uncover whatever twisted plan my family had set in motion. The invitation had been sent, the trap had been set, but they had no idea that their intended victim was now the hunter. The Grandview Hotel stood like a gleaming monument to excess in downtown Washington, its marble facade reflecting the afternoon sun. I arrived an hour early for Madison's ceremony, hoping to find her alone before the evening's festivities began. The invitation had specified cocktails at 6, dinner at 7, but I knew Madison's obsessive nature. She would be there hours early, micromanaging every detail. I wore a simple black cocktail dress professional, but understated the kind of outfit that would blend into the background. Tucked in my purse was my phone with a fully charged battery and a recording app ready to activate. After finding Madison's hidden plea for help, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be more than just another family humiliation ritual. The hotel staff recognized Madison's name immediately when I asked for her at the front desk. "Miss Montgomery is in the Crystal Ballroom," the concierge said with a practiced smile. "She's been here since noon preparing. Shall I announce you?" "No need, she's expecting me." I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, my heels clicking against marble floors as I walked toward the ballroom. The doors were propped open, revealing an opulent space decorated in silver and gold. Round tables draped in ivory linens filled the room, each centerpiece a towering arrangement of white orchids and roses. A stage dominated the far wall where a podium waited beneath a massive screen displaying Celestial Innovations' logo. But it was the sound that stopped me cold. Crying. Desperate broken sobs echoing from somewhere nearby. I followed the sound to the women's bathroom adjacent to the ballroom. Inside, I found Madison hunched over a sink, her carefully applied makeup streaming down her face in black rivers. She wore a stunning silver gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, but her shoulders shook with the kind of grief that expensive clothing couldn't hide. "Madison!" She spun around, eyes wide with panic. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she lunged forward, gripping my arms with desperate strength. "You came. Oh God, Alberta, you actually came." Her voice cracked on every word. "I didn't think. After everything I've done to you, I didn't think you'd really show up. What's going on?" I kept my voice calm, professional, even as my mind raced. This wasn't the Madison I knew. This was someone on the edge of a complete breakdown. "I can't do this anymore." She released me and stumbled back against the sink. The lies, the pressure, the threats. Do you know what it's like to wake up every morning knowing that everything you've built is fake, that you're nothing but a puppet dancing on strings? I thought about the financial records I'd uncovered about Eleanor's hidden control over Madison's company. "Tell me about the money, Madison. Tell me about Montgomery Financial Holdings." Her face went white beneath the streaked makeup. "You know, how do you—" "I know Eleanor has been controlling your company. I know the seed money came from your trust fund, not from legitimate investors. What I don't understand is why you let her do it." Madison laughed a bitter sound that held no humor. "Let her. You think I had a choice? You got out Alberta. You went to college, got your nice safe government job, built a life away from her. But me, I was the chosen one, remember? The golden child who would carry on the Montgomery legacy. She turned to the mirror, staring at her ruined reflection. Do you know what she told me when I was 16? That I was born to make her proud, that my success would be her success. I thought she meant she wanted me to achieve great things. I didn't realize she meant she wanted to achieve things through me. Madison, if you're being coerced, if Eleanor is threatening you, I can help. There are resources, protection. She whirled around, eyes blazing. From Eleanor Montgomery. Do you know what she's capable of? Do you know what she's done to people who've crossed her? Before I could respond, the bathroom door burst open. Eleanor stood there in a burgundy gown that made her look like royalty, her perfectly styled gray hair gleaming under the lights. Her gaze went from Madison's tear-stained face to me, and her expression hardened into something dangerous. Madison, darling, what are you doing? Her voice was silk over steel. Your guests will be arriving soon. You need to fix your face. Mother, you were just having another one of your episodes. Eleanor glided forward, producing a handkerchief from her clutch. Honestly, Madison, on tonight of all nights, do you want people to think you're unstable, that you can't handle the pressure of success? She began roughly wiping at Madison's face, her movements more aggressive than maternal. Madison stood frozen like a child being scolded. I watched horrified by the dynamic playing out before me. And Alberta. Eleanor continued without looking at me. How thoughtful of you to arrive early. Though I do hope you brought something more appropriate to wear. This is a celebration of excellence, not a funeral. My outfit is fine, Mother. She finally turned to me, and the coldness in her eyes made me step back. Is it? Well, I suppose we can't all have Madison's sense of style. Speaking of which, Madison, tell your sister about the wonderful announcement you'll be making tonight. Madison's hands trembled as she reached for her clutch. Yes, the announcement. Go on. Eleanor prompted, her grip on Madison's arm tightening until my sister winced. I'm announcing a new addition to our executive team, Madison said mechanically. A new CFO position. Someone I trust completely to handle our financial operations. My blood ran cold. They couldn't be planning what I thought they were planning. Eleanor smiled, the expression never reaching her eyes. Yes, and we've already prepared the contracts, all perfectly legal and binding. The new CFO will have full signing authority, complete access to all accounts, and most importantly, full liability for any financial decisions made by the company. I won't do it, I said flatly. Whatever scheme you're running, I won't be part of it. Scheme. Eleanor's laugh tinkled like broken glass. My dear Alberta, this is a legitimate business opportunity. Madison is offering you a chance to finally be part of something successful. Isn't that what you've always wanted, to be recognized, to matter? She moved closer, invading my personal space. Or would you prefer to remain a nobody investigating other people's successes because you're too frightened to achieve your own? I'd prefer to stay honest, I shot back. Something that seems to be in short supply in this family. Eleanor's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something vicious underneath. Honesty. How quaint. Tell me, Alberta, how honest have you been with us? Accepting our invitations, coming to our family gatherings, pretending to be the supportive sister, while secretly judging us, while investigating us, perhaps. The way she said that last part made my heart skip. Did she know about the federal investigation, or was she fishing? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Eleanor circled me like a predator. Madison, tell your sister about the interesting phone call I received yesterday from a friend at the Justice Department. Madison's eyes widened in genuine surprise. Mother, what call? Eleanor ignored her. It seems someone has been asking questions about celestial innovations, poking around in places they shouldn't, making certain people very nervous. If Madison's company is legitimate, then there's nothing to worry about, I said evenly. Oh, but there's always something to worry about, isn't there? Especially when family members can't be trusted to protect each other. She stopped directly in front of me. Tonight's announcement will solve so many problems. A new CFO taking responsibility for all financial matters past and present. Someone whose signature appears on all the relevant documents. Someone who sadly has been embezzling funds for personal gain. You're insane if you think I'll sign anything. Are we? Eleanor smiled again. Madison, show your sister who's already on the guest list for tonight. Madison pulled out her phone with shaking hands, showing me the RSVP list. My stomach dropped as I recognized several names: federal judges, state prosecutors, the deputy director of the FBI, people who could destroy my career with a single word. They're all so excited to meet our new CFO, Eleanor purred. To shake hands with the woman whose name appears on so many interesting financial documents. Documents that were filed months ago, all properly dated and notarized. It's amazing what money can buy, isn't it? She meant forged documents, papers that would show I'd been involved with celestial innovations from the beginning. My signature on fraud-riddled financial statements, my authorization on illegal transfers. A perfectly crafted frame that would destroy my credibility as a federal investigator. Security, Eleanor called out suddenly. 2 large men in suits appeared in the doorway. Please escort Ms. Montgomery to table 23, the one in the back corner. She seems to be feeling overwhelmed and needs a quiet place to sit. Don't touch me, I warned as they approached. Now, Eleanor tisked. Let's not make a scene. You are going to walk calmly to your table and wait for the ceremony to begin. And when Madison makes her announcement, you're going to smile and accept graciously. Because if you don't... She leaned in close. Her whisper meant only for me. Well, let's just say that your little boyfriend Derek might find his journalism career taking an unfortunate turn. It would be such a shame if those photos from his college days surfaced. The ones from that party where underage drinking led to that girl's death. He wasn't responsible, of course, but the media can be so unforgiving. My blood turned to ice. You're threatening Derek. He has nothing to do with this. Everyone has something to do with this now. Eleanor straightened, smoothing her dress. Madison, fix your face and get back to preparations. Alberta, be a good girl and go to your table. The show starts in 90 minutes. The security guards flanked me, their presence making it clear I had no choice. As they escorted me from the bathroom, I caught one last glimpse of Madison in the mirror. She was mouthing something, just 2 words repeated over and over. I'm sorry. But I couldn't worry about Madison's guilt or Eleanor's threats right now. I had 90 minutes to figure out how to stop this trap from closing. 90 minutes to save not just my career, but potentially my freedom. And somewhere in this elegantly decorated ballroom was the key to turning Eleanor's plan against her. As the guards deposited me at table 23, I noticed something Eleanor hadn't counted on. My table gave me a perfect view of the audio-visual booth, where technicians were setting up the presentation equipment. If I could somehow get to that booth, I might be able to disrupt the ceremony to prevent Madison from making her announcement. But first, I needed to activate my insurance policy. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages while actually opening my recording app. Whatever happened tonight, I would have evidence. Eleanor Montgomery thought she had me trapped, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. She'd trained me to be overlooked, to be invisible. And invisible people could slip through cracks that others couldn't see. The ceremony hadn't started yet, but the real performance was about to begin. The crystal ballroom filled quickly as Washington's business elite arrived in waves. I sat at my exile table watching familiar faces from newspaper headlines and television interviews stream through the doors. Tech executives, venture capitalists, political figures all here to celebrate Madison's coronation as Entrepreneur of the Year. From my corner, I had a clear view of the head table where Eleanor held court greeting each guest with practiced charm. Madison stood beside her, the picture of composed success in her silver gown, all traces of her bathroom breakdown erased. Only I could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speaker system, "please take your seats. Tonight's ceremony will begin shortly." I watched the audio-visual booth calculating distances and obstacles. 2 security guards remained posted near my table, their eyes never leaving me. Eleanor had planned this perfectly, even down to my seating assignment that kept me visible but isolated. The lights dimmed as the ceremony began. A man I recognized as Thomas Hartwell, CEO of one of the country's largest venture capital firms and Madison's primary investor, took the stage. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight we celebrate not just success, but transformation. Madison Montgomery hasn't just built a company. She's revolutionized how we think about sustainable technology." His words rang hollow as I recalled the fraudulent patents in the FBI files, but the audience ate it up, applauding enthusiastically. "Of course," Hartwell continued, "no entrepreneur succeeds alone. Madison has been fortunate to have the guidance of her brilliant mother, Eleanor, and the financial expertise of her sister, Alberta." My stomach clenched. The trap was beginning. "Alberta Montgomery," he said, gesturing toward my corner, "who has been instrumental in Celestial Innovations' financial strategy from day one." Heads turned to look at me. I kept my expression neutral even as my mind raced. They were establishing a narrative, creating witnesses who would later swear they heard about my involvement with the company. The next speaker was Patricia Chen, a prominent tech journalist whose blog reached millions. "Madison once told me that her sister Alberta was her secret weapon. She handles all the complex financial structures," Madison said. "I couldn't have built this without her." This was worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just planning to announce my new position, they were rewriting history, inserting me into Celestial Innovations' story from the beginning. Each speaker added another layer to the fabrication, and the audience had no reason to doubt what they were hearing. I pulled out my phone, pretending to respond to messages while actually typing a rapid text to Robert Sullivan. "Emergency at Grandview Hotel. They're setting me up as CFO of Celestial. Multiple witnesses present, including Deputy Director Watson. Need backup." The response came quickly. "Stay put, record everything, team mobilizing." Another speaker took the stage, this one, a congresswoman who served on the technology subcommittee. "Innovation requires not just vision, but trust. Madison Montgomery has built her success on family values, bringing her sister Alberta into the fold to ensure financial transparency and integrity." Financial transparency. The irony nearly made me laugh, but something else caught my attention. At the head table, Madison was growing increasingly agitated. She kept glancing at her phone, then at Eleanor, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite read. Then Eleanor stood moving to the podium with the grace of a queen approaching her throne. The room fell silent. "My dear friends," she began, "tonight is a celebration of what a mother dreams for her children. Success, recognition, legacy. Both of my daughters have exceeded my wildest hopes." She turned to look directly at me, and the malice in her smile made my blood run cold. "Alberta, my youngest, tried to hide her light under a bushel for so long, working her little government job, pretending she didn't want more. But a mother knows her children's true desires. That's why I was so thrilled when she finally agreed to join Madison's venture." "That's a lie," I said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Eleanor's smile never wavered. "Oh, Alberta, always so modest. Ladies and gentlemen, my daughter has been secretly managing Celestial Innovations books for the past 3 years. Every financial filing, every investor report, all bearing her careful touch. She insisted on staying in the shadows, but tonight Madison wants to finally give her the recognition she deserves." My phone buzzed. "Derek, are you okay? Just saw something strange. 3 FBI vehicles parked outside the hotel, but no one's coming in." Before I could respond, Madison rose from her seat. She moved toward the podium like someone walking to their execution. Eleanor whispered something in her ear as they passed, and Madison flinched as if struck. "Thank you all for being here." Madison began, her voice barely audible even with the microphone. "Success is..." Success is never achieved alone. Tonight I want to acknowledge someone whose contribution to celestial innovations has been invaluable. She looked at me then, and I saw something shift in her expression. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else flickered. Defiance, maybe, or desperation. My sister Alberta has indeed been instrumental in my company's growth. She continued, her voice growing stronger. Her expertise in financial matters is unmatched. That's why I'm honored to announce that she's accepting the position of Chief Financial Officer, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. I stood shaking my head, but the security guards pressed closer, their message clear. Make a scene, and they would make it worse. I need to clarify something, I called out, pitching my voice to Carrie. I have never worked for Celestial Innovations. I'm a federal... She's so humble, Eleanor interrupted smoothly, her voice amplified by a second microphone. Alberta has always preferred to work behind the scenes, but we have all the documentation right here. She gestured to an assistant who wheeled out a cart stacked with folders. 3 years of employment records, tax filings, board meeting minutes, all properly documented and filed with the appropriate agencies. Forged. Every single document had to be forged. But to the audience, it looked like overwhelming evidence of my involvement. In fact, Eleanor continued, Alberta has been so dedicated that she's personally guaranteed several of our international contracts. Her signature appears on every major financial decision we've made. This was beyond just making me CFO. They were creating a paper trail that would make me personally liable for every fraudulent deal, every fake contract, every dollar of phantom revenue. I won't sign anything, I stated firmly. Eleanor's laugh tinkled through the ballroom. Oh, my dear, you already have. Months ago. You've just been so busy with your important government work that you must have forgotten. She pulled out a document, holding it up for the room to see. Even from my distance, I could see what purported to be my signature at the bottom. This is fraud, I said. Document forgery is a federal crime. Is it forgery when we have security footage of you visiting our offices, when we have email records of your correspondence, when dozens of employees can testify to your involvement? Eleanor's voice hardened. Or is it just a case of a frightened woman trying to distance herself now that questions are being asked? Questions are being asked. She did know about the investigation. This whole ceremony was designed to make me the scapegoat when the fraud was exposed. Madison suddenly gripped the podium, her knuckles white. I need to say something else. Madison, Eleanor warned. But Madison wasn't looking at her mother. She was looking at me, and her next words came out in a rush. Alberta has been investigating financial irregularities. She came to me with concerns about our accounting practices. As CEO, I take full responsibility for any issues she may have uncovered. The board should know that she's been trying to fix problems, not create them. The room went silent. Eleanor's face flushed with rage. This wasn't part of the script. But before anyone could respond, Madison swayed on her feet. I don't feel... She collapsed. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests rushed toward the stage. Someone called for a doctor. In the confusion, I saw my chance. The security guards had moved to help with crowd control, leaving my path to the audiovisual booth clear. I moved quickly but calmly, just another concerned guest trying to get a better view. But instead of joining the crowd around Madison, I slipped into the booth where a technician was frantically trying to maintain the video feed. FBI, I said quietly, showing him my badge. I need you to upload a file to the presentation system, now. His eyes widened, but he nodded. I handed him my phone with the recording app open. When I give you the signal, play this over the speaker system, full volume. Back on stage, Madison was sitting up, insisting she was fine, just overwhelmed. Eleanor knelt beside her, and I could see her lips moving in what looked like threats rather than comfort. I stepped out of the booth and moved toward the stage, my federal badge now visible. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Special Agent Alberta Montgomery with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I need everyone to remain calm and stay in your seats. Eleanor shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. Security. but I was already at the podium, my voice carrying through the microphone. For the past month, I've been investigating celestial innovations for investment fraud. Tonight's ceremony appears to be an attempt to obstruct that investigation by falsely implicating me as an employee of the company. "She's lying!" Eleanor shrieked. "She's trying to destroy her own sister out of jealousy." I nodded to the technician. A moment later, Eleanor's voice filled the ballroom crystal clear from the recording I'd made in the bathroom. A new CFO taking responsibility for all financial matters past and present. Someone whose signature appears on all the relevant documents. Someone who, sadly, has been embezzling funds for personal gain. Then, it's amazing what money can buy, isn't it? And finally, your little boyfriend Derek might find his journalism career taking an unfortunate turn. The recording cut off, leaving devastating silence in its wake. Federal crimes had been committed, and everyone in the room had just heard the evidence. I looked at the crowd, recognizing the deputy director among the shocked faces. "I believe backup is waiting outside. Someone should probably let them in." As FBI agents flooded the ballroom, I locked eyes with Madison. She was crying again, but this time there was relief mixed with the tears. Whatever hold Eleanor had over her, it was finally breaking. Eleanor stood frozen as agents approached her, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. The puppet master had been so focused on pulling strings that she'd forgotten one simple truth: even invisible daughters could learn to fight back. And sometimes, the best trap was the one that caught its own creator. The FBI agents moved through the ballroom with practiced efficiency, but Eleanor wasn't finished. As two agents approached her, she straightened her spine and addressed the room with the imperious tone of someone who still believed she controlled the situation. "This is a misunderstanding," she announced. "My daughter is clearly having some kind of breakdown. Stress, perhaps, or maybe something more serious. Mental illness does run in families." The implication hung in the air like poison. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the calculation in Eleanor's eyes. If she could paint me as unstable, she might still salvage this. "Agent Montgomery has an impeccable record," Deputy Director Watson said, stepping forward from the crowd. "I've personally reviewed her work on numerous cases. Her mental fitness is not in question here." Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. "Then explain why she would fabricate such an elaborate conspiracy against her own family. We've done nothing but try to include her." I walked down from the stage, maintaining my professional demeanor, even as rage boiled in my chest. "Shall we discuss the forged documents you just presented? The ones with my signature dated 3 years ago. I'm sure the FBI's forensic analysts will find them very interesting." "Forged." Eleanor laughed, but it sounded forced. "Alberta, you signed those papers. I watched you do it." "Really? When exactly did this happen?" "Multiple occasions. Board meetings you attended, strategy sessions at our offices." She turned to the crowd. "We have witnesses, employees who saw her there." Madison struggled to her feet, pushing away the hotel staff trying to assist her. "Stop it, Mother. Just stop." "Madison, darling, you're confused. The stress—" "I said stop." Madison's voice cracked like a whip through the ballroom. She gripped the podium for support, but her eyes blazed with something I'd never seen before: courage. "You want to talk about witnesses? Then let's talk about who really runs Celestial Innovations." Eleanor took a step toward her daughter. "Madison, think carefully about what you're saying. Think about the consequences." "The consequences?" Madison laughed bitterly. "You mean like the consequences of building a company on lies, of defrauding investors who trusted me, of destroying my relationship with the only family I have left?" She looked at me, then tears streaming down her face. "Alberta never worked for Celestial. She never signed anything. Every document with her signature is fake. Mother had them created by a forger in Baltimore. I have the receipts. I have the emails. I have proof of everything." The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Eleanor's mask finally slipped, completely revealing the vicious predator beneath. "You ungrateful little bitch," she hissed. "After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" Madison's voice rose. "You sacrificed me. You turned me into a criminal before I even understood what was happening. You stole my trust fund, my future, my life." Eleanor moved faster than I would have thought possible for a woman her age. Her hand shot out, grabbing Madison's hair and yanking her away from the podium. Madison cried out, stumbling in her heels. I rushed forward. "Let her go, Eleanor." My mother turned on me, still gripping Madison's hair. "This is your fault. You couldn't just accept your place. You had to dig, had to investigate, had to ruin everything." "The only person who ruined anything is you," I said, trying to keep her attention on me while Madison struggled. "You built an empire on fraud and thought you could make me take the fall." "You were perfect for it," Eleanor snarled. "The overlooked daughter, the government drone. Who would believe you weren't involved, a jealous sister trying to bring down the family success story?" Agent Sullivan appeared beside me. "Mrs. Montgomery, release your daughter immediately." Eleanor's grip tightened, making Madison whimper. "Or what, you'll arrest me. Go ahead. But know this, if I go down, everyone goes with me. Every investor who looked the other way, every politician who took our donations, every judge who signed off on our documents." "Mother, please," Madison gasped. "Shut up!" Eleanor shook her violently. "You were supposed to be my masterpiece, my legacy. But you're weak, just like your father." That name, never spoken in our house, seemed to electrify the air. Madison's eyes widened and I saw my opening. "Tell us about Dad, Eleanor," I said quietly. "Tell us about the car accident that wasn't really an accident." Eleanor's face went white. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? Financial fraud wasn't your first crime, was it? Dad found out what you were doing with his family's money. He was going to divorce you, take us away. But then he conveniently died in a single-car crash on a clear night on a road he'd driven 1,000 times." The ballroom was silent except for the scratch of pens as several journalists furiously took notes. This had transformed from a financial scandal to something much darker. "Your father was a weak fool," Eleanor spat. "He would have destroyed everything I built." "So you destroyed him first," I said. It wasn't a question. Eleanor's composure shattered completely. With a snarl of rage, she shoved Madison away and lunged at me. "You sanctimonious little nothing. You think you're so righteous, so pure. You're nothing. You've always been nothing." I sidestepped her charge, my FBI training taking over. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She grabbed a champagne bottle from a nearby table, raising it like a weapon. "Mother, no," Madison screamed. Time seemed to slow. I saw the bottle arcing toward my head, saw the hatred in Eleanor's eyes, saw the shocked faces of the crowd. My body moved on instinct, ducking under the swing and catching Eleanor's wrist. The bottle flew from her grip, shattering against the stage in an explosion of glass and foam. Eleanor's momentum carried her forward, and we both crashed into a table, sending plates and glasses flying. "I'll kill you!" Eleanor shrieked, clawing at my face. "I should have gotten rid of you years ago. You were never supposed to matter." I managed to flip her onto her stomach, pulling her arms behind her back in a control hold. "Eleanor Montgomery, you're under arrest for assault on a federal officer, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit fraud." She continued to struggle and scream obscenities, her dignified facade completely destroyed. The elegant society matron had revealed herself as the vicious criminal she'd always been. As agents moved in to take custody of Eleanor, I looked up to find Madison standing nearby, her silver gown torn, her face streaked with mascara. But for the first time in my memory, she looked free. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. For all the years I helped her hurt you. For being too weak to stand up to her. For almost letting her destroy you tonight." I stood slowly, feeling every bruise from the struggle. "We need to talk, Madison. Really talk. About everything." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "I know. The FBI will want my cooperation. I'll tell them everything. Every crime, every cover-up, every victim. I want to make this right. Behind us, Eleanor continued to rage as agents led her away. "This isn't over. You think you've won. I own judges. I own senators. I'll be out by morning." Deputy Director Watson approached us, his expression grave, but not unkind. "Agent Montgomery will need your statement, and Ms. Montgomery—" He looked at Madison. "We'll need to discuss your cooperation agreement. Full disclosure might keep you out of prison." Madison straightened her shoulders. "I understand. I'm ready to face the consequences." As the ballroom slowly emptied crime scene technicians beginning their work, I noticed someone standing in the doorway. Derek, his press credentials visible, his camera capturing everything. Our eyes met across the chaos, and he gave me a small nod of encouragement. "Your boyfriend?" Madison asked, following my gaze. "Yeah." "Eleanor threatened him, didn't she, to control you?" I nodded. "She threatened everyone I cared about." Madison looked down at her ruined dress. That was her specialty, finding what mattered most to people and holding it hostage. She did it to me with you. "What do you mean?" "Every time I thought about defying her, she'd remind me how easy it would be to destroy your career, plant evidence, spread rumors. She said if I ever betrayed her, you'd be the one to pay for it." Madison met my eyes. "I told myself I was protecting you by keeping you away, but really I was just a coward." The admission hung between us, years of pain and misunderstanding starting to unravel. We had both been Eleanor's victims played against each other in a sick game of control and manipulation. "Agent Montgomery." An FBI technician approached. "We found a hidden room behind the stage. You're going to want to see this." Madison and I followed him backstage where a section of wall had been opened to reveal a small office space. Inside, boxes of documents lined the walls. Financial records, contracts, correspondence, Eleanor's real books, the ones that showed where every stolen dollar had gone. But it was the wall of photographs that made my blood run cold. Pictures of Madison and me at various ages, but also dozens of other people. Some faces I recognized from the business world, others were strangers. Red X marks crossed through several photos. "Victims," Madison said quietly. "People who got in her way, business partners who asked too many questions, investors who wanted their money back." She pointed to one photo, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "Thomas Brennan. He tried to expose her 5 years ago. He died in a boating accident 2 weeks later." I stared at the wall of Eleanor's victims, understanding the true scope of what we'd uncovered. This went beyond financial fraud. This was a pattern of destruction spanning decades. "She was never going to let me go," Madison said, her voice hollow. "Even if tonight had gone according to plan, even if you'd been arrested for the fraud, she would have found new ways to control me. I would have been her puppet forever." I put my hand on her shoulder, feeling her tremble. "But you're not. You stood up to her. You told the truth. That took incredible courage." "It took you walking into that ballroom with your badge," Madison corrected. "You gave me the strength to finally fight back." As crime scene photographers documented Eleanor's hidden office, I thought about the phone call that started this night. My sister punched me in the face and dragged me out by my hair, but in the end, she'd helped me expose the truth. The physical confrontation had been Eleanor's final undoing, the violent outbreak that revealed the monster beneath the mask. But there was still more work to be done, more victims to find, more crimes to document, more truth to uncover. Eleanor Montgomery's empire of lies was crumbling, and from its ashes, maybe Madison and I could finally build something real. Not the false family Eleanor had created through manipulation and fear, but something honest, however imperfect. The confrontation had erupted in violence and chaos, but sometimes destruction was necessary for rebuilding. And as I watched the FBI systematically dismantling Eleanor's secret office, I knew the real work was just beginning. Eleanor's screams echoed through the ballroom as the FBI agent secured her hands behind her back with handcuffs. But even being arrested couldn't stop her from spewing venom. The crowd of Washington's elite stood frozen, their black tie elegance a stark contrast to the raw ugliness unfolding before them. "You're making a mistake," Eleanor shouted at the agents. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who I know?" Deputy Director Watson stepped forward. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'd advise you to remain silent." Silent. Eleanor laughed a harsh sound that made several people step back. "I've been silent while building an empire that props up half this room. Senator Morrison, tell them about the campaign contributions." A distinguished man in the crowd paled and quickly looked away. "And you, Judge Hartman." Eleanor continued, her voice rising. "Remember that vacation home in the Hamptons, the one your wife doesn't know about?" The judge hurried toward the exit, his young companion trailing behind. Madison grabbed my arm. "She's going to expose everyone." "Let her," I said quietly. "Every threat she makes is another charge. Every person she implicates is another lead to investigate." But Eleanor wasn't finished. As the agents tried to guide her toward the exit, she twisted in their grip, her sophisticated updo now hanging in disarray. "You want to know about public humiliation, Alberta? Let me tell you what humiliation really is." She focused her wild eyes on me. "It's watching your worthless daughter coast through life on a government salary, while your brilliant one builds an empire. It's knowing that no matter how much you achieve, you're still married to a weak man who'd rather die than fight for what's his." "Eleanor, stop," one of her society friends pleaded from the crowd. "Stop? Why should I stop? They've already destroyed me." Eleanor's voice dripped with poison. "But I'll take every last one of you down with me. Every dirty deal, every bribe, every affair, every secret you thought was buried." Madison stepped forward. "Mother, please, just go with them quietly. Don't make this worse." Eleanor's head snapped toward her elder daughter. "Worse, you ungrateful brat. I made you everything you are. Without me, you'd be nothing but another pretty face with a useless degree." "Without you, I'd be free," Madison shot back. "Free?" Eleanor's laugh was unhinged. "You were never meant to be free. You were meant to be my legacy, my weapon. But you're too weak, just like your pathetic sister." I felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on us. Phones were out recording everything despite the FBI's requests to stop. By morning, this meltdown would be viral, the Montgomery family's destruction playing out in real time for the world to see. "Mrs. Montgomery," Agent Sullivan intervened, "every word you say is being recorded and can be used against you." "Good," Eleanor spat. "Record this Congressman Davies took $50,000 in bribes to push through zoning changes. Jennifer Walsh at the Post killed 3 stories about my company in exchange for her son getting into Harvard. The mayor's wife has been skimming from the children's charity for years." Gasps rippled through the crowd as people began to realize the breadth of Eleanor's reach. She hadn't just built a fraudulent company, she'd created a web of corruption that touched every level of Washington society. "And you." Eleanor turned her venom on a woman in a red gown. "Patricia Chen, you wrote that glowing profile of Madison last year. Did you mention that I paid off your gambling debts? Did you disclose that I own the paper your husband works for?" The journalist fled, her face burning with shame. Madison looked ill. "She has dirt on everyone." "Not everyone," I said. "Just the people who were willing to be corrupted." Eleanor heard me and laughed again. "Oh, Alberta, still so naive. You think you're clean. You think your precious integrity protected you. I've been watching you for years. That apartment you rent, I own the building. That coffee shop where you meet your boyfriend, I have recordings of every conversation." My blood ran cold, but I kept my face neutral. Eleanor was spiraling, throwing out threats and revelations without strategy. Some might be true, others desperate lies. The FBI would sort through it all. "Is that supposed to frighten me?" I asked calmly. "You monitored your own daughter like a criminal. That says more about you than me." "I protected my interests," Eleanor snarled. "Something you never understood. You were always too pure, too righteous. Just like your father. He thought he could expose me, too. Look how that ended." The admission hung in the air. Eleanor had just confessed to murder in front of 200 witnesses and a room full of federal agents. Madison made a sound like a wounded animal. "You killed him. You actually killed Dad." He was going to destroy everything. Eleanor said, her voice suddenly calm, almost reasonable. "The business, our reputation, our future." He found some irregularities in the books and suddenly developed a conscience. After 10 years of benefiting from my work, he decided to play hero. She looked at me with pure hatred. "He was going to take you both and disappear. Said he'd rather be poor and honest than rich and compromised. Fool. As if honesty ever fed a family or built a legacy." "So you had him murdered," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I protected my children's future," Eleanor corrected. "Madison needed the opportunities I could provide. Even you benefited Alberta. That college education paid for with money your father would have squandered on his stupid principles." The crowd was utterly silent now, witnessing something far beyond a business scandal. This was a family's darkest secrets being dragged into the light. "Take her," Deputy Director Watson ordered. But as the agents moved to escort Eleanor out, she played one final card. With surprising strength, she broke free from their grip and lunged not at me, but at Madison. "This is your fault," she screamed, her hands finding Madison's hair. "If you'd just played your part, none of this would have happened." Madison cried out as Eleanor dragged her toward the exit, using her own daughter as a human shield. The agents hesitated, not wanting to risk injuring Madison. "Mother, stop," Madison sobbed. "Please." "You were supposed to be perfect," Eleanor ranted as she pulled Madison along. "My greatest creation. But you're flawed, weak, pathetic. Just like your sister. Just like your father." I moved without thinking, placing myself between Eleanor and the door. "Let her go." "Move or I'll snap her neck." Eleanor threatened, her arm now around Madison's throat. "You won't," I said with certainty, "because Madison is the only thing you ever really loved, even if you don't know how to show it properly." Eleanor's grip loosened slightly. "Love I don't love. Love is weakness. I invested, I built, I controlled." "Then why are you so angry that she betrayed you?" I pressed. "If she was just an investment, you'd write her off and move on. But you can't, can you? Because somewhere under all that poison, you actually care." "Shut up," Eleanor's voice cracked. "You don't know anything." "I know you're scared," I continued, stepping closer. "For the first time in your life, you're completely out of control. No money to buy your way out. No secrets to leverage. No one left to manipulate. Just you and the truth." Eleanor's arm trembled around Madison's neck. Behind her, I could see agents moving into position, ready to act if needed. "The truth." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "The truth is that I gave everything for this family. Every sacrifice, every hard choice, every bridge burned. And this is how you repay me." "You gave nothing," Madison said hoarsely. You took our father. You took our choices. You took our lives and shaped them to serve your ambition." "I made you strong." "You made us afraid," I corrected. "Afraid of disappointing you, afraid of being abandoned, afraid of each other. That's not strength, Eleanor. That's abuse." The words seemed to break something in Eleanor. Her grip on Madison loosened, and in that moment the agents acted. They pulled Madison to safety, while others restrained Eleanor. This time she didn't fight. The fight had gone out of her, leaving only a hollow-eyed woman in a ruined designer gown. As they led her away, Eleanor looked back one last time. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. "When you realize how cold the world is without my protection, you'll wish you'd been grateful." "The only thing I regret," I replied, "is that it took this long to stop you." Eleanor said nothing more as the agents escorted her out, but her silence was somehow worse than her screams. The ballroom erupted in chaos the moment she was gone. People fleeing phones, ringing conversations, exploding about what they'd witnessed. Madison stood in the center of it all, looking lost and broken. Her perfect dress was destroyed, her careful image shattered. But when she met my eyes, I saw something that hadn't been there before. Relief. "It's over," she whispered. "No," I said gently. "It's just beginning. The investigation, the trials, the recovery. We have a long road ahead." She nodded, wiping at her tears. "But she's gone. For the first time in my life, Eleanor is gone." I thought about all the years of manipulation, the careful grooming, the constant control Eleanor had wielded over both of us. Madison was right. Our mother was gone, not just from this ballroom, but from our lives. The puppet strings had finally been cut. But as I looked around the emptying ballroom, at the shattered champagne bottles and overturned tables, at the abandoned podium where Madison was supposed to have announced my destruction, I knew the hardest part was still to come. Eleanor had been exposed, but her victims, including us, still needed justice. Her empire still needed to be dismantled, and Madison and I still needed to figure out how to be sisters without Eleanor's poison between us. The public humiliation was complete. Eleanor Montgomery, society queen and business titan, had been dragged from her own celebration in handcuffs, confessing to murder and corruption in front of everyone who mattered. But as satisfying as her downfall was, I knew it was just the first step in a much longer journey. The real work of healing would begin tomorrow. The loading dock behind the Grandview Hotel was a chaos of flashing lights, FBI vehicles, local police cruisers and ambulances, creating a disco of red and blue against the concrete walls. Eleanor had been taken away in the first transport, but the scene was far from over. Madison and I stood in the harsh fluorescent light of the dock, both of us looking like survivors of a disaster. Her silver gown was torn at the shoulder, makeup streaked down her cheeks. I wasn't much better, my dress ripped from the struggle, my carefully styled hair now a wild mess. "Agent Montgomery," a paramedic approached. "We need to check your injuries." I waved him off. "I'm fine, just bruises." "Protocol, ma'am. That was a violent assault." As he checked my pupils for signs of concussion, I watched Madison being examined by another paramedic. She winced as they touched her neck, where Eleanor had gripped her. The bruises were already forming dark fingerprints against her pale skin. "Your nose needs attention," the paramedic said to me. "It's not broken, but Alberta." I turned to see Derek pushing through the police barrier, his press credentials getting him past the first line of security. An FBI agent stopped him 10 feet away. "That's my boyfriend," I called out. "Let him through." Derek reached me in 3 strides, his hands hovering near my face like he wanted to touch, but was afraid of hurting me. "Jesus, Alberta, when I saw her attack you—" "I'm okay," I assured him. "It looks worse than it is." "I got it all," he said quietly. Every word, every threat, every confession. My camera was running the whole time. I felt a mix of gratitude and unease. Having evidence was crucial, but I also knew our relationship was about to be scrutinized by every media outlet in the country. "Mr. Garrison," Agent Sullivan approached, "we'll need copies of your footage for evidence." "Of course," Derek agreed. Then he looked at me, something strange in his expression. "Alberta, there's something I need to tell you about why I was really at that financial crimes conference where we met." My stomach dropped. "Derek, I've been investigating Eleanor Montgomery for 2 years, he said in a rush. "Before I ever met you, I was tracking financial crimes in tech startups, and her name kept coming up. When I realized who you were at that conference, I should have told you immediately. But You used me," Madison said flatly from where she sat on an ambulance gurney. "You started dating my sister to get information on our family." "No," Derek said firmly. "I fell in love with your sister despite the investigation. Meeting Alberta it complicated everything. I tried to keep the two things separate." I stared at him, processing this revelation. How much of our relationship was real? "All of it," he said desperately. "Every moment, every feeling. I stopped actively investigating your family the day after our second date. I couldn't do it anymore, not when I was falling for you." "But you kept recording tonight," I pointed out. As a journalist, yes, and because I saw Eleanor threatening you. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. He pulled out a flash drive. 2 years of investigation, financial records interviews with victims, patterns of fraud going back decades. I was going to publish it all next month, but now it's evidence, Agent Sullivan said, taking the drive. Mr. Garrison will need a full statement about your investigation. I felt numb. In one night, I discovered my mother was a murderer. My sister had been her unwilling accomplice, and my boyfriend had been investigating my family since before we met. Trust seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Agent Montgomery, another FBI agent, approached. We found something in Mrs. Montgomery's vehicle you need to see. I followed him to a Blacktown car parked near the loading dock. In the trunk, 3 suitcases sat packed and ready. But it was the manila envelope on top that caught my attention. Inside were passports, Eleanor's real one and 2 fake ones under different names. Plane tickets to the Cayman Islands departing in 3 hours, bank routing numbers for offshore accounts, and photographs. Oh God, I breathed. The photos showed Madison and me at various locations over the past week. Outside my apartment, at the coffee shop with Derek, entering the FBI building. Each photo had notes on the back in Eleanor's handwriting. A leaves at 7:23 a.m. M meeting with lawyers, 2 p.m. D arrives at 6:47 p.m. She'd been watching us planning something. There's more, the agent said, handing me another document. It was a contract with a private security firm known for their willingness to do anything for the right price. The work order was dated for tonight, with 2 targets listed, Madison Montgomery and Alberta Montgomery. The instructions were chilling in their simplicity. Ensure subjects cannot testify. She was going to have us killed, Madison said, having followed me to the car. Her voice was hollow, emotionless. After the ceremony, after framing you for the fraud, she was going to eliminate us both. I showed the contract to Agent Sullivan. His face went grim. We need to get you both into protective custody immediately. No, I said. I'm an FBI agent. I can protect myself. Your mother just tried to have you assassinated, Sullivan pointed out. This goes beyond a normal case. She's in custody, I argued. She has associates, people she could have called before the arrest. He turned to Madison. Ms. Montgomery, do you know of anyone else involved in your mother's operations who might carry out her wishes? Madison wrapped her arms around herself. Harold Blackwood. He's her fixer. He handles problems that lawyers can't solve. Blackwood, Derek interjected. I have a file on him. Former CIA went private sector. Suspected in at least a dozen deaths never convicted. Sullivan immediately got on his radio. All units be advised. Possible threat from one Harold Blackwood. Consider armed and extremely dangerous. We're getting you both out of here, he told us. Safe house, at least for tonight. As agents prepared for our evacuation, I looked at Madison. My sister, my former tormentor, my fellow target. Did you know about the assassination plan? No, she said quietly. But I'm not surprised. When Eleanor decides someone is a liability, she eliminates them. I just never thought, I'm her daughter. I did everything she asked for years. How could she plan to kill me? Because you're not her daughter in her eyes, I said, understanding flooding through me. You're an asset, and when assets become liabilities, they're disposed of, Madison finished. A convoy of FBI vehicles pulled up to the loading dock. Sullivan gestured for us to get in. We need to move, now. But as we walked toward the vehicles, a figure emerged from the shadows between 2 dumpsters. Harold Blackwood, looking exactly like his file photo, mid-50s, gray hair, dead eyes. He held a gun with professional calm. Nobody moves, he said quietly. Mrs. Montgomery wants this handled quietly. Drop your weapon. Multiple FBI agents drew their guns. Blackwood didn't flinch. 2 bullets, 2 targets. I'll complete my contract before you drop me. My mind raced. Madison stood frozen beside me. Derek was too far away to help. But then I remembered something Eleanor had said in her rant. I own the building where Alberta lived. I had recordings of every conversation. "Blackwood," I called out. "Did Eleanor tell you she kept recordings of everyone including you?" His eyes flickered with interest. "She's been recording all her associates for years. Insurance policy, every meeting, every phone call, every contract killing discussed." I took a careful step forward. "When this goes to trial, those recordings become evidence. Your voice planning murders, discussing payments, revealing client names." "You're lying," he said, but uncertainty crept into his tone. "Am I? You know how Eleanor operates. Would she really trust anyone completely? Would she work with someone like you without protecting herself?" Madison caught on to my strategy. "She showed me some of them. The Brennan hit 5 years ago. She has your whole conversation about making it look like an accident." Blackwood's gun wavered slightly. "That's impossible. I swept for bugs." "Not in her jewelry," I said. "Her brooch, her watch, her rings. All recording devices. She told me tonight she's been watching everyone for years." The standoff stretched taut. Dozens of guns pointed at one man who could still complete his mission before dying. But I could see him calculating, weighing Eleanor's betrayal against his contract. "She's in custody," I pressed. "She'll trade those recordings for a deal. You know she will. She'll burn everyone to save herself." "Just like she burned my father," Madison added bitterly. Blackwood studied us for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He laughed. 20 years I've worked for that woman," he said. 20 years of cleaning up her messes. And you know what I always knew this day would come. The day Eleanor Montgomery's empire would eat itself." He slowly lowered his gun, placing it on the ground. "I'm too old for prison, but I'm also too old to die for someone who was planning to sell me out." FBI agents swarmed him, securing the weapon and taking him into custody. As they led him away, he called back, "Check her home safe, behind the Monet reproduction. That's where she keeps the master recordings." Sullivan immediately dispatched a team to Eleanor's mansion. Then he turned to us. "That was incredibly dangerous, Agent Montgomery." "But effective," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline crash. "Into the vehicles, now, no more delays." As we finally loaded into the SUVs, Madison beside me and Derek in the vehicle behind, I realized our escape from the hotel was more than physical. We'd escaped Eleanor's final trap, her last attempt to control us from beyond her arrest. But Blackwood's surrender had revealed something crucial. Eleanor had been recording everyone, keeping evidence of crimes far beyond financial fraud. Her empire wasn't just built on money, it was built on blackmail, murder, and mutually assured destruction. "Where are we going?" Madison asked as the convoy pulled away from the hotel. "Somewhere safe," Sullivan answered. "Where you can help us unravel your mother's network without worrying about assassination attempts." I looked back at the Grandview Hotel, its elegant facade hiding the ugly scene we'd left behind. In one night, I'd gone from overlooked daughter to federal witness to assassination target. Madison had gone from golden child to co-conspirator to fellow victim. And Derek, I still didn't know what Derek was to me anymore. But we were alive. We were free from Eleanor's immediate reach, and we had work to do. The emergency exit had been more dramatic than anyone could have imagined, but we'd made it out. Now came the harder part, staying alive long enough to see justice done. The FBI safe house sat in a quiet suburb of Alexandria, a nondescript 2-story home that looked like every other house on the tree-lined street. Inside, it was all business-reinforced windows, security cameras, and agents stationed at every entrance. I sat at the kitchen table holding an ice pack against my bruised cheek while Madison huddled on the couch in the living room, wrapped in an FBI windbreaker over her ruined gown. Derek was in a separate room giving a statement about his 2-year investigation. Agent Montgomery. Sullivan approached with a laptop. "We've accessed the recordings from your mother's safe. You need to see this." The screen showed a file directory with hundreds of audio and video files, each labeled with names and dates. I recognized many of them: politicians, judges, business leaders, Eleanor's personal surveillance network. "This is..." I trailed off, overwhelmed by the scope. 23 years of recordings. Sullivan confirmed. Your mother built a blackmail empire. Every person who ever worked with her invested in her companies or helped cover her crimes. She has them all here. I clicked on a file labeled Thomas Brennan Final Meeting. Eleanor's voice filled the room, cold and businesslike. Mr. Brennan's becoming problematic. He's asking questions about the Singapore accounts. Handle it. Make it look recreational. Then Blackwood's voice. Boating accident. Perfect. His wife mentioned he's taking the yacht out this weekend. I closed the file, feeling sick. Madison had been right. Thomas Brennan had been murdered for asking questions. My phone buzzed the burner phone Sullivan had given me, an unknown number. Don't answer that, Sullivan warned. But something made me pick up. Hello. Heavy breathing, then a familiar voice that made my blood freeze. Eleanor. Hello, darling. How? I gestured frantically to Sullivan, who immediately started a trace. Did you really think they took my only phone? Eleanor's laugh was bitter. I've been preparing for this day for years. I have resources you can't imagine. What do you want? To offer you one last chance. Both of you. My lawyer will arrive within the hour with papers. Sign them, accept responsibility for the fraud, and I'll ensure you're treated well in minimum security. Refuse, and I'll release recordings that will destroy everyone you've ever cared about. You're in federal custody, I reminded her. You can't release anything. Can I check your email, Alberta, the personal one, not your FBI account? Against my better judgment, I opened my phone's email. A video file waited in my inbox. I clicked play and immediately wished I hadn't. It showed Derek in what looked like a college dorm room, clearly intoxicated, at the party Eleanor had mentioned earlier. A young woman was visible in the background, drinking heavily. The timestamp showed this was 3 hours before her death from alcohol poisoning. Derek had nothing to do with her death, I said. Of course not, but edited properly with the right narrative spin, the promising journalist who got a girl drunk and let her die, his career would be over, his reputation destroyed. You're sick. I'm practical, and this is just one example. Should I send you the video of Madison's college professor, the one she had an affair with? His wife doesn't know, nor do his 3 children. Or perhaps the recording of your beloved Aunt Patricia confessing to immigration fraud 20 years ago. Madison had moved closer, hearing Eleanor's voice. I put the phone on speaker. Mother, Madison said quietly, stop this. Madison, darling, I'm disappointed in you most of all. After everything I've done, every sacrifice I've made, you stand there with her, with the daughter who was supposed to be nothing. Alberta was never nothing, Madison shot back. You just couldn't see her value because you can't see anything beyond your own ambition. Spare me the sisterly bonding. You hated her for 28 years. Because you made me. Madison's voice cracked. Every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, it was all you. You pitted us against each other from the time we could walk. I made you competitive, strong, winners. You made us miserable, I corrected. And now you're trying to manipulate us from a jail cell. It's over Eleanor. Is it, by my count, I have leverage on approximately 200 people in positions of power. Judges who will hear my case, prosecutors who will try it, witnesses who will testify. One phone call from me and their secrets go public. Sullivan slipped me a note. Keep her talking. Almost have her location. So what's your plan? I asked. Blackmail your way to freedom. Then what? Go back to your life knowing both your daughters want nothing to do with you. Silence. Then, you were never really my daughters. You were projects, investments. Alberta was the failure I kept around to motivate Madison, and Madison was the success I shaped to carry my legacy. But neither of you turned out as planned. Because we're people, Madison said tearfully, not stocks in your portfolio. People disappoint. Investments can be liquidated. Eleanor's tone turned darker. Which brings me to my final offer. I've already transferred $50 million to untraceable accounts. Sign the confession, serve your time, and when you get out, you'll be wealthy. Refuse and I'll burn everything down around you. Your careers, your relationships, your reputations, ashes. We'll take our chances, I said. Will you think about Derek, Alberta? His parents are teachers in Ohio, salt of the earth people. How do you think they'll react when deep fake videos surface, showing their son in compromising positions? Technology is wonderful these days. I can destroy him without using any real footage at all. My hands clenched. Threatening me was one thing, but Derek's innocent family... Or Madison, Eleanor continued. Did you know 3 of your employees are undocumented? I do. 1 phone call to ICE and their lives are ruined. Their children deported. All because you couldn't sign a simple paper. You're a monster, Madison whispered. I'm a mother protecting what I built. Last chance girls. My lawyer arrives in 43 minutes. Sign or watch everyone around you burn. Sullivan showed me another note. Got her. She's at the detention center using a guard's phone. Eleanor, so I said carefully, we need time to think. 42 minutes. The line went dead. She can't really do all that, can she? Madison asked, tears streaming down her face. Sullivan's expression was grim. Some of it, yes. We're working to secure her recordings, but she likely has backups we haven't found. The deepfake threats are real that technology exists. And if she has compromised guards helping her, we can't let her hurt innocent people, Madison said. Derek's family, my employees, they don't deserve this. No one deserves this, I agreed. But if we confess to crimes we didn't commit, Eleanor wins. She walks free and continues destroying lives. Derek entered the room, having overheard the end of the conversation. She threatened my parents. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Then we fight back, he said firmly. I've been investigating her for 2 years. I have sources, contacts, people she's hurt who want justice. We can expose her entire network before she can act. In 40 minutes, Madison asked skeptically. We don't need 40 minutes. Derek pulled out his laptop. I've been preparing to publish for months. Everything's ready, financial records, victim testimonies, pattern analysis, showing decades of fraud and worse. 1 click and it goes live on every major news site. If you publish, she'll retaliate, I warned. Let her try. Once it's public, her leverage disappears. Blackmail only works in darkness. He looked at me. But I won't do it without your permission. This is your family, your choice. I thought about Eleanor's empire of secrets built on fear and manipulation. Every person in her files was a victim of sorts, forced to compromise their integrity or live in terror of exposure. If we gave in now, it would never end. Do it, I decided. Publish everything. Madison grabbed my hand. Together. We face whatever comes together. Derek's fingers flew across the keyboard. Within minutes, his exposé began appearing online. Eleanor Montgomery, the architect of Washington's darkest secrets. Social media exploded as people shared the revelations. My phone rang again. Eleanor. You stupid girl, she snarled. Do you know what you've done? Yes, I said calmly. We've ended your reign of terror. I'll destroy you, both of you. Everyone you love will pay for this betrayal. No mother. Madison spoke up, her voice stronger now. You'll sit in your cell and watch your empire crumble. You'll see your victims find justice. And you'll know that your daughters, the investments you tried to control, were the ones who brought you down. Eleanor's scream of rage was cut off as the line went dead, this time permanently. Sullivan confirmed the guard who'd given her the phone was in custody. As the night wore on, the responses poured in. Victims of Eleanor's blackmail came forward. Others she'd threatened expressed relief. The FBI received dozens of offers to testify against her. But it was a message from Aunt Patricia that hit hardest. I'm proud of you both. Your father would be too. Madison and I sat together on the couch, exhausted but free. Derek worked with the FBI to coordinate information, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my shoulder. We'd survived Eleanor's final manipulation, her last desperate attempt to control us from behind bars. She never loved us, Madison said quietly. Not really. No, I agreed. But maybe that's her loss, not ours. As dawn approached, painting the safe house windows with soft light, I thought about the family we might build from the ruins of Eleanor's empire. Not perfect, not without scars, but honest, real. The late-night call had been Eleanor's last weapon, and we'd survived it. Now, finally, we could begin to heal. The morning after Eleanor's arrest, I sat across from Aunt Patricia in a small cafe in Old Town Alexandria. The FBI had cleared the meeting, posting agents discreetly around the perimeter. Patricia looked older than her 63 years, gray, streaking through hair that had once been as dark as mine lines, etched deeply around green eyes that mirrored my father's. "You look like him," she said softly, studying my face. Thomas had that same determined set to his jaw when he was pursuing the truth. Madison sat beside me, nervously shredding a napkin. She'd barely spoken to Patricia since our father's funeral 15 years ago. Eleanor had made sure of that, painting our aunt as unstable, jealous, someone who would poison us against our mother. "Tell us about Dad," I said. "The real him, not the version Eleanor created." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Your father was the gentlest soul I ever knew. Brilliant with numbers, that's where you get it, Alberta. But he had Madison's gift for seeing the best in people. It's what made him vulnerable to Eleanor." She pulled out a weathered photo album from her bag. "I've been carrying this everywhere since I heard about last night. I hoped that someday I'd get to share these with you." The first photo showed our parents on their wedding day. Dad looked young and hopeful, his arm around Eleanor, who appeared radiant in white. But even in that happy moment, I could see something calculating in Eleanor's eyes. "They met at a charity auction," Patricia continued. "Eleanor was volunteering, or so she claimed. Later, we discovered she'd researched every wealthy attendee and positioned herself strategically. Thomas was her biggest catch. Old family money connections to half of Washington's elite, and trusting enough to believe her act." "When did you realize what she really was?" Madison asked quietly. "Not soon enough." Patricia turned the page to photos of us as babies. The first few years seemed perfect. Eleanor played the devoted wife and mother beautifully. But I noticed things. The way she'd study people at parties, filing away their weaknesses. How she'd manipulate Thomas into business deals that always benefited her friends. She showed us a picture of Dad holding toddler me while Madison played at his feet. The love in his eyes was unmistakable. "Your father adored you both. He wanted to be a hands-on parent, but Eleanor slowly pushed him out, said he was too soft, that he'd make you weak. She had very specific plans for how you'd be raised." "To serve her ambitions," I said bitterly. "Exactly. Madison would be the public success groomed from birth to be extraordinary. You, Alberta, were designated as the backup kept capable, but never allowed to outshine your sister. Competition between you was encouraged to keep you both striving for her approval." Madison made a choked sound. "She told me Alberta was jealous of me, that I had to be careful or she'd sabotage my success. Well, she told me I'd never measure up," I added, "that Madison was everything I could never be." "Classic triangulation." Patricia's voice hardened. "Eleanor was a master manipulator, but your father started seeing through it when you were about 10 and 12. He found discrepancies in their joint accounts, money moving to places it shouldn't, investments in companies that didn't exist." She pulled out a folder of documents. "Thomas hired a forensic accountant quietly. What they found was staggering. Eleanor had been siphoning money from his family trust for years, using it to build her own shadow empire. Shell companies, offshore accounts, a network of financial crimes that would make your FBI cases look simple." "Why didn't he go to the authorities?" I asked. "He was gathering evidence. And—" Patricia hesitated. "He was afraid. By then, Eleanor had connections everywhere. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. She'd spent 10 years building a web of favors and blackmail. Thomas knew if he moved against her without ironclad proof, she'd destroy him. So she destroyed him first," Madison said flatly. Patricia nodded, tears flowing freely now. He called me the night he died, said he'd found something devastating and was meeting with a federal prosecutor the next morning. He sounded relieved, like he could finally protect you girls from her. She showed us a newspaper clipping about the accident. Single car crash on a clear night. No skid marks. Blood alcohol level just over the legal limit, unusual for a man who rarely drank. The investigation was perfunctory, Patricia continued. The lead detective owed Eleanor a favor she'd gotten his son out of a drug charge. The coroner was her golf partner. Everyone who might have questioned the accident was either bought or blackmailed into silence. You knew all this and did nothing. Madison's voice rose. I tried, Patricia's composure cracked. I went to the police, the FBI, anyone who would listen. But a grieving sister making accusations against a wealthy widow without Thomas's evidence, I was dismissed as hysterical. And then Eleanor came to me with a proposition. She looked down, ashamed. Stay quiet and she'd let me see you occasionally. Keep pushing and she'd make sure I never saw you again. She might even arrange for me to have an accident too. I was a coward. I chose to stay in your lives even if it meant watching her poison you against each other. You were protecting yourself, I said gently. We understand that now. Do you? Patricia pulled out a safety deposit box key. I spent 15 years gathering evidence anyway. Every financial record I could find. Testimonies from people Eleanor hurt who were too scared to speak publicly. A copy of your father's original investigation that I managed to retrieve from his office before Eleanor cleaned it out. She slid the key across the table. Box 471 at First National downtown. Everything's there, including something Thomas recorded the week before he died. My hands shook as I took the key. A recording. He was paranoid by then, documenting everything. The recording is him detailing what he'd found and his fears about what Eleanor might do. He names names, provides account numbers, exposes the entire network. Patricia met my eyes. He also talks about you both. How much he loved you, how he was doing this to give you a chance at normal lives. Madison broke down completely, then sobbing into her hands. I put my arm around her, my own tears falling silently. There's more, Patricia said quietly. Your grandmother's death, 5 years before your father's, also suspicious. She'd been perfectly healthy, then suddenly had a fatal reaction to a medication she'd never been prescribed. Eleanor inherited everything, using it to expand her operations. 2 murders, I said numbly. At least. I found 3 others. Business partners who asked too many questions. A journalist who got too close to the truth. That secretary who was going to testify in a lawsuit against one of Eleanor's companies. Patricia's voice was steady now, the relief of finally telling the truth evident. Your mother didn't just run financial crimes, girls. She was a serial killer who used money instead of guns. Madison looked up, eyes red and swollen. How many people knew, how many stood by and let her do this? Too many, Patricia admitted. But they were afraid. Eleanor had turned fear into a currency more valuable than money. Cross her and lose everything, your reputation, your family, your life. The few who tried to stop her ended up destroyed or dead. Until now, I said firmly. It ends now. Patricia smiled sadly. Your father would be so proud. You did what he couldn't. You exposed her completely. And you did it together, which would have meant everything to him. We spent the next hour looking through photos, learning about the father Eleanor had erased from our lives. His love of jazz music, his terrible dad jokes, how he'd sneak into our rooms at night to leave notes under our pillows, telling us he loved us. Memories Eleanor had stolen along with his life. I have something else, Patricia said as we prepared to leave. She handed Madison a small jewelry box. Your father bought this for your 18th birthday. He was so excited, said it would be perfect for when you graduated. Madison opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with 2 charms, a book and a magnifying glass. The book for Madison, who he said would write her own story. The magnifying glass for Alberta, who he knew would always seek the truth. Patricia smiled through her tears. "He wanted you to share it, to remember you were sisters first, no matter what came between you." Madison fastened the bracelet on my wrist, then held out her arm. I did the same for her. For the first time in our lives, we had something of our father's that Eleanor hadn't touched. As we left the cafe, the FBI escort falling into step behind us, I thought about all the years of lies we'd lived under. Eleanor hadn't just stolen our father, she'd stolen our relationship with each other, with our extended family, with ourselves. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and truth once released is impossible to recapture. The family history had unraveled completely, revealing not the successful matriarch Eleanor pretended to be, but a murderer who'd built an empire on the bones of her victims. Patricia hugged us both tightly before we parted. "She can't hurt anyone anymore. You made sure of that. Your father's finally getting justice 15 years late." As we drove back to the safe house, Madison and I sat in silence, processing the weight of what we'd learned. Eleanor wasn't just a criminal. She was a monster who'd worn the mask of motherhood while destroying everyone around her. But we'd survived, scarred, damaged, but alive. And now we had the truth about our father, our family, ourselves. The unraveling was complete. Now came the harder task of weaving something new from the threads Eleanor had tried to cut. The safety deposit box waited downtown, holding the final pieces of evidence that would ensure Eleanor never walked free again. Our father's voice, silenced for 15 years, would finally be heard. Justice was coming, not just for Madison and me, but for everyone Eleanor had destroyed in her relentless pursuit of power. The family history had unraveled, but from its threads we would weave a new story, one where truth conquered fear, where sisters stood together, and where love proved stronger than ambition. By midnight, Derek's article had shattered the internet. Eleanor Montgomery, the architect of Washington's darkest secrets, trended worldwide within hours. Every major news outlet scrambled to follow up on the explosive revelations, decades of fraud, blackmail, and murder, meticulously documented with evidence that couldn't be ignored. I stood in the FBI safe house watching the coverage on multiple screens. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, even international outlets, all leading with Eleanor's story. Photos of her being arrested at the gala played on loop her designer gown and handcuffs, creating a visual metaphor too powerful for any network to resist. The Montgomery financial empire appears to have been built on a foundation of corpses, one anchor intoned. With at least 5 suspected murders now under investigation, Madison sat curled on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through her company's internal communications. "My entire executive team is resigning," she said numbly. "Investors are pulling out. Employees are deleting their LinkedIn connections to Celestial Innovations." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. She laughed bitterly. "Don't be. It was all built on lies anyway. Every contract, every innovation Eleanor claimed we created, stolen or fabricated. At least now I can stop pretending." Derek's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Every journalist in the country wanted to interview the reporter who'd broken the story of the decade. He turned them all down, focused on coordinating with the FBI to ensure accurate information reached the public. "Alberta." Agent Sullivan entered the room. "Eleanor's attorney is holding a press conference. You need to see this." The screen switched to a live feed outside the detention center. Marcus Fitzgerald, a defense attorney famous for representing the worst of the wealthy, stood before a forest of microphones. His $1,000 suit and silver hair presented an image of respectability that made my skin crawl. "My client, Mrs. Eleanor Montgomery, has been the victim of a coordinated attack by jealous family members and a corrupt system." He began smoothly. "These allegations are fantasy created by daughters who resented their mother's success and sought to steal her fortune." "You can't be serious," Madison muttered. But Fitzgerald was just warming up. "Alberta Montgomery, who claims to be an FBI agent, has a history of mental instability. Her obsession with her more successful sister led to delusions of persecution. As for Madison Montgomery, her recent financial troubles drove her to conspire against the woman who gave her everything. Financial troubles. Madison straightened. What financial troubles? Derek was already typing. He's not wrong. Celestial Innovations has been hemorrhaging money for months. You've been covering it with creative accounting, but... Because Eleanor was draining the accounts, Madison protested. She took millions for her personal use, left me scrambling to make payroll. On screen, Fitzgerald continued his character assassination. We have witness statements confirming Alberta Montgomery's erratic behavior. Her violent outburst at last night's gala, where she attacked her own mother, demonstrates her dangerous instability. I defended myself, I said through gritted teeth. Furthermore, Fitzgerald smiled coldly. We have evidence that Derek Garrison, the so-called journalist, has been conducting an illegal surveillance operation against my client for years. His relationship with Alberta Montgomery represents a clear conflict of interest and potentially criminal conspiracy. That's insane, Derek said, but I could see worry in his eyes. In the court of public opinion, truth mattered less than narrative. Sullivan's phone buzzed. He answered, his face growing grim. 3 more lawyers just joined Eleanor's defense team, all top tier. Someone's funding this. Who, I asked, though I suspected the answer. The people in her blackmail files. If she goes down, she's taking them with her. They're investing in her defense to protect themselves. The media storm intensified by the hour. Social media split into camps, those who believed Derek's thoroughly documented expose and those swayed by Fitzgerald's counter-narrative. Then came the first real blow. Agent Montgomery, another FBI agent, entered. There's a video circulating. You need to see it. The clip, already viral, showed me at the gala from an angle that obscured Eleanor's initial attack. It looked like I'd lunged at her unprovoked, violent, and unhinged. Expert editing had removed the context, creating a damning narrative. Security footage from the hotel, the agent explained. Someone leaked it, probably bribed hotel staff. Can we release the full footage? I asked. Working on it, but the damage is spreading faster than we can counter it. Madison's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and paled. It's the Washington Post. They want a statement about... She listened, her face growing more stricken. About my confession to financial crimes. What confession? I demanded. She covered the phone. They have a video of me from 2 years ago, drunk at a company party, joking about cooking the books. Out of context, it sounds like I'm admitting to fraud. This was Eleanor's network in action. Every favor owed, every secret held weaponized to destroy our credibility. Even from a jail cell, she was orchestrating our destruction. By dawn, protesters had gathered outside the safe house. Somehow, our location had leaked. Signs reading "Justice for Eleanor" and "Lying Sisters" filled the street. News vans lined up like vultures, reporters doing stand-ups with the house in the background. We need to respond, Derek said. Silence lets them control the narrative. No interviews, Sullivan ordered. Not until the investigation... The investigation will be undermined if public opinion turns completely against us, I argued. Eleanor's counting on that. She knows if she can paint us as the villains, no jury will convict her. Madison stood abruptly. I'll do it. I'll go public, tell them everything. How she controlled me, threatened me, used me. Maybe if people hear the truth directly... It's too dangerous, Sullivan protested. More dangerous than letting Eleanor win. Madison's voice cracked. She killed our father. She destroyed countless lives. I won't let her walk free because I was too scared to speak up. Before anyone could stop her, Madison was at the front door. I followed, grabbing her arm. If you're doing this, we do it together. She met my eyes, and for the first time in our lives, I saw my sister, not Eleanor's puppet, not my rival, but my sister. Together. We stepped outside into a tsunami of flashing cameras and shouted questions. The crowd pressed forward, held back by FBI agents, forming a protective barrier. Madison raised her hand for silence, and surprisingly, the cacophony diminished. My name is Madison Montgomery. She began, her voice carrying clearly. And everything my mother taught me was a lie. The crowd stirred reporters leaning forward. Eleanor Montgomery murdered my father when I was 13. She stole my inheritance, used it to build a criminal empire, and forced me to be the face of her fraud. When I tried to resist, she threatened the people I cared about. Last night, she tried to have both her daughters killed because we finally found the courage to expose her. "Where's your proof?" someone shouted. I stepped forward. "The proof is in the FBI evidence files. The proof is in the testimonies of dozens of victims who are finally speaking out. The proof is in the recordings Eleanor herself made while planning murders and destroying lives." "You attacked your mother," another reporter called. "We've all seen the video." "You saw an edited version," I replied calmly. "The full footage shows Eleanor attacking me first after confessing to murder in front of 200 witnesses. Ask anyone who was there." Madison pulled out her phone. "You want proof? This is a text from my mother sent an hour before the gala." She held it up, reading aloud. "Remember, darling, Alberta's signature on the documents must look authentic. If she refuses, we proceed to Plan B." Plan B was assassination, I added. The FBI found the contracts in her car. The crowd's energy shifted doubt, creeping into their hostility. But then Fitzgerald appeared, flanked by security, his voice booming through a megaphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing desperate women trying to save themselves through lies and manipulation. I have here sworn affidavits from 10 Celestial Innovations board members confirming Alberta Montgomery's involvement in financial decisions." "Forged or coerced," I shot back. "Check when those board members received large deposits into their accounts." The media storm became a hurricane, reporters scrambling between us and Fitzgerald, the narrative fragmenting into competing versions of truth. But then something unexpected happened. A woman pushed through the crowd Patricia Chen, the journalist Eleanor had humiliated at the gala. Her face was set with determination. "I was at the awards ceremony," she announced. "I saw everything. Eleanor Montgomery confessed to murders. She attacked her own daughter. She tried to frame Alberta for crimes she didn't commit. And yes, I took her bribes in the past, but I won't be silent anymore." Another voice joined hers. "I'm Thomas Brennan Jr. Your mother killed my father because he asked questions about fraud. I've been waiting 5 years for justice." More voices emerged from the crowd. Victims Eleanor had silenced through fear or money, emboldened by our public stand. The narrative was shifting the truth, finally louder than Eleanor's lies. Fitzgerald retreated, his confident facade cracking. The crowd's hostility turned to curiosity, then sympathy as person after person shared their stories of Eleanor's destruction. "My company was destroyed when I refused to launder money. She had my brother deported because I wouldn't sell her my patent. My wife died in an accident after she discovered Eleanor's offshore accounts." Madison gripped my hand as we listened to the litany of pain our mother had caused. Each testimony was a nail in Eleanor's coffin, but also a weight on our souls. We were Eleanor Montgomery's daughters. Her crimes were written in our DNA, her victims' pain partially our inheritance. But we were also the ones who'd stopped her. And as the sun rose, fully casting long shadows across the crowd, I realized the media storm hadn't destroyed us. It had revealed us flawed, damaged, but ultimately choosing justice over family loyalty. "We're not asking for your sympathy." Madison addressed the crowd one final time. "We're asking for your patience as the legal system does its work. Our mother was a monster who wore the mask of respectability. We tore off that mask. Now let justice finish what we started." We returned inside, leaving the crowd to process what they'd witnessed. The media storm would continue, but we'd altered its course. Truth had entered the narrative carried by voices Eleanor had tried to silence forever. Sullivan met us at the door, his expression unreadable. That was either brilliant or incredibly stupid. "Both," I admitted, "but necessary." "You did it," Derek said quietly. "You broke her narrative." "We started to," Madison corrected, "but Eleanor's not finished. She'll have other moves, other weapons." As if summoned by her name, Sullivan's phone rang. He listened, his face paling. "There's been an incident at the detention center. Eleanor attempted suicide. She's alive but hospitalized under guard." Madison sank into a chair. I felt numb. Even facing life in prison, Eleanor was trying to control the story. A suicide attempt would garner sympathy, paint her as a desperate woman, driven to extremity by cruel daughters. "No," I said firmly. "This is another manipulation. Eleanor would never give up control, especially not through suicide. She's planning something." Sullivan studied me. "You think she faked it?" "I think Eleanor Montgomery doesn't do anything without calculating the advantage. She's playing a game we haven't figured out yet." The media storm raged on outside, but inside the safe house, a cold certainty settled over me. Eleanor's empire was crumbling. Her crimes exposed her victims speaking out. But the woman who'd murdered her own husband, who'd built decades of power on fear and lies, wasn't finished. The storm was just beginning. Dawn broke gray and miserable over Washington, matching the mood inside the safe house. The media storm continued to rage outside, but inside a different tempest was brewing. Madison stood at my bedroom door, her face haggard, clutching a manila envelope. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Alone." I followed her to the kitchen where she spread the envelope's contents on the table. Financial documents, emails, photographs, a paper trail of secrets. "Before you hear this from Eleanor or her lawyers, I need you to know the truth. All of it." Madison's hands shook as she organized the papers. I wasn't just her puppet Alberta. For years, I was her willing accomplice. "Madison, please let me finish. You deserve to know who you're really defending." She pulled out a financial statement dated 5 years ago. The Brennan murder. I knew it was going to happen. My blood went cold. "You knew she was planning to kill him." "Not specifically, but I knew she was going to handle him." I'd heard that phrase before. When I was 16, there was a business partner who threatened to expose some early fraud. Mother said she'd handle it. 2 weeks later, he died in a home invasion. Madison's voice was eerily calm. I learned not to ask questions. She showed me another document. "This is from 3 years ago, Celestial Innovations' first major contract, completely fabricated. I signed off on it knowing it was fake, knowing we were defrauding investors of millions. Because Eleanor forced you. Because I wanted to succeed." Madison's composure cracked. Yes, she controlled me, manipulated me, threatened me, but part of me, a big part, wanted what she was offering. The success, the recognition, the power. I told myself I was a victim, but victims don't enthusiastically participate in crimes. She pulled out a photograph that made my heart sink. It showed Madison at a dinner with Harold Blackwood and several other dangerous-looking individuals. "I knew who they were," she continued. "Eleanor's fixers, the people who made problems disappear. I sat at that table, smiled, charmed them, knowing they had blood on their hands, because they were useful to our business." "Madison, stop." I reached for her hand. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She jerked away. "You stood up in front of those cameras and called me a fellow victim. But I'm not just a victim, Alberta. I'm a perpetrator. I hurt people. Maybe not directly, but I knew money was being stolen, lives were being ruined, and I kept signing documents, kept playing the golden child." She showed me an email thread from last year. Her responses to Eleanor were enthusiastic, offering suggestions for hiding assets, proposing new schemes. There was no evidence of coercion, just eager collaboration. The worst part. Madison laughed bitterly. I was good at it. The fraud, the manipulation, the public deception. Eleanor didn't just groom me. She found something dark inside me and nurtured it. People aren't born evil, Madison. She shaped you from childhood. Did she just water seeds that were already there? Madison pulled out the most damaging document yet. This is my personal account in the Caymans. $12 million skimmed from investor funds. Eleanor didn't make me do this. I did it myself because I could, because I felt entitled to it after everything I'd endured. I stared at the account statement, trying to reconcile this with the broken woman who'd begged for help at the gala. "When did it change?" I asked quietly. "When did you decide to stop?" Madison wiped at her tears. 6 months ago, we were at a charity event, ironic, right? A fundraiser for families affected by white-collar crime. One woman spoke about how her husband killed himself after losing everything to a fraudulent investment scheme. She showed photos of her children, talked about them, asking why Daddy was gone. She paused, composing herself. I realized I was creating those widows, those orphans. Every fake contract, every stolen dollar, it destroyed real people. That night, I went home and threw up until there was nothing left. Then I started documenting everything, preparing for the day I'd find the courage to stop. "But you didn't stop," I pointed out. "No, because I was a coward, because I was comfortable, because—" She met my eyes. "Because I knew it would destroy you too. Your career, your reputation. The perfect daughter who did everything right would be tainted by association. Part of me, the part Eleanor created, enjoyed knowing I could hurt you that way." The confession hung between us like a blade. Years of resentment, jealousy, and manufactured hatred condensed into this moment of brutal honesty. "So why tell me now?" I asked. "Because Eleanor's lawyers will use this. They'll paint me as the real mastermind, claim she was just a mother trying to protect her criminal daughter. They'll destroy my plea deal, send me to prison for decades." Madison pushed the documents toward me. "And because you deserve the truth before you decide whether to keep defending me." I looked at the evidence of my sister's crimes, thinking about the little girl who'd once shared her Halloween candy with me, who'd held my hand during thunderstorms before Eleanor taught us to be enemies. "Show me everything," I decided. "Every crime, every victim, every detail. We're going to document it all." Madison's eyes widened. "Alberta, you're going to confess. Publicly. Completely. Not just the crimes Eleanor forced you into, but the ones you chose. You're going to name every victim you can remember, every dollar you stole, every lie you told." That's prosecutorial suicide. I'll get life in prison. Maybe. Or maybe a judge will see someone taking real responsibility for the first time in this whole mess. Either way, it's the only path to redemption. Madison stared at me. "You're not going to protect me, not going to minimize my involvement." "No, because that would make me complicit. And because—" I took a deep breath. "Because I love you enough to help you face justice, not escape it." She broke down, then sobbing with the abandon of someone whose last defenses had crumbled. I held her while she cried, this sister who'd been my tormentor and fellow victim, criminal, and family. When her tears finally stopped, we got to work. For hours, we cataloged every crime she could remember. The widow in Bethesda whose husband's pension had been stolen. The small business owner in Georgetown who'd lost everything to a fraudulent contract. The young entrepreneur whose revolutionary design had been stolen and repackaged as Celestial Innovations product. "There are more," Madison said hoarsely. "So many more." Eleanor kept the victim files in a storage unit. She called it her insurance policy, detailed records of everyone we'd destroyed in case she needed to prove she wasn't working alone. Where? Madison provided the address and access codes. Within an hour, FBI agents had secured the storage unit, finding boxes upon boxes of meticulously organized destruction. Eleanor had indeed kept trophies of her victims, like a serial killer collecting souvenirs. Derek worked with us to craft Madison's public confession. Not a legal document full of carefully parsed admissions, but a raw, honest accounting of her crimes and complicity. She named names, provided amounts, offered to liquidate every asset to compensate victims. "This will destroy any chance of a light sentence," Derek warned. "Good," Madison said firmly. "I've been destroying other people's chances for years. Time I face the same." The confession went live that afternoon. Madison recorded it herself, speaking directly to the camera without makeup or pretense. She looked like what she was, a criminal finally choosing honesty over self-preservation. The response was immediate and brutal. Former friends denounced her. Business associates distanced themselves. The media painted her as either a monster or a fool. But among the vitriol came something unexpected: messages from victims thanking her for the truth, for giving them names to put to their pain. Eleanor's response came through her lawyer within hours. A statement claiming Madison was lying to secure a better deal, that she'd been the true mastermind, using her mother as a shield. The war between mother and daughter had entered a new phase. But Madison didn't flinch. Let her lie. I'm done with lies. That evening, as we sat exhausted in the safe house, Madison gave me one last document, a deed transfer signing over everything she owned to a victim compensation fund. "I can't undo what I did," she said quietly, "but I can stop profiting from it." "What will you do after prison?" She smiled sadly. "Assuming I ever get out, I don't know. Maybe something simple, honest. Work with my hands instead of my manipulations. Learn who I am without Eleanor's voice in my head. I'll be there," I promised. "When you get out, we'll figure out how to be sisters without her poison between us." Madison squeezed my hand. "I don't deserve that." "No," I agreed. "But family isn't about what we deserve. It's about choosing to love despite the damage." As night fell over the safe house, I thought about the confession that had shattered Madison's remaining defenses. She'd chosen truth over survival, justice over protection. It wouldn't erase her crimes, but it was a beginning. Eleanor had created 2 daughters, one to be her weapon, one to be her shield. But we were choosing to be something else, honest about our scars, accountable for our actions, and committed to breaking the cycle of manipulation that had defined our lives. The sisters' confession was complete. Now came the harder work of living with truth instead of lies. The revelation about Eleanor's suicide attempt being staged proved correct when security footage revealed the truth. She'd swallowed a carefully calculated dose of sleeping pills, enough to cause concern, but never enough to truly threaten her life. The hospital trip had been theater designed to buy time and sympathy, while her remaining network mobilized. 3 days after Madison's confession, I stood in the FBI command center surrounded by screens showing financial data surveillance footage and a massive web of connections linking Eleanor's criminal enterprise. The scope was staggering. Hundreds of offshore accounts, dozens of shell companies, connections reaching into every level of government and business. "She's been moving money," Agent Sullivan reported. "Even from custody, she's managed to transfer millions through intermediaries. The funds are disappearing into cryptocurrency untraceable after multiple conversions." "How?" I demanded. "She's in federal custody." "Lawyers," Derek said from his workstation. "Fitzgerald isn't just defending her, he's helping her hide assets. Every attorney-client meeting is an opportunity to pass messages." Madison sat nearby wearing an ankle monitor after being released on bond. Her public confession had earned her supervised release while she cooperated with authorities. She studied the financial patterns with the expertise of someone who'd helped create them. There, she pointed to a transaction. That routing number, it's one of her emergency protocols. When that account activates, it triggers a cascade of automatic transfers. She's not just hiding money, she's funding something. "What kind of something?" Sullivan asked. Before Madison could answer, alerts flooded our systems. The FBI's witness protection database had been breached. Names, locations, and security details of Eleanor's victims who'd agreed to testify were being leaked onto the dark web. "She's targeting witnesses," I realized, trying to silence them before trial. Sullivan immediately initiated emergency protocols, mobilizing units to secure the exposed witnesses. But Eleanor had a head start, and her network was vast. The first attack came within hours. Patricia Chen, the journalist who'd testified at the gala, was nearly run down in a parking garage. Only her last-second dodge saved her life. The driver escaped the car later, found burned in an abandoned lot. Then Thomas Brennan Jr. reported being followed. His home security system was mysteriously offline when masked figures were spotted on his property. He'd fled to a hotel, but even there, threatening calls found him. "She's orchestrating this from a hospital bed," one agent asked incredulously. "She's had years to prepare," Madison explained. "Contingency plans, activation codes, people who owe her favors or fear her enough to act. Even locked up, she's dangerous." We worked frantically to protect the witnesses, but Eleanor's reach seemed infinite. A judge who'd agreed to testify about bribes received photos of his grandchildren at school. A former business partner found her car brakes mysteriously failing. The message was clear: testify and suffer. "We need to find where she's hiding the money," I said. "Cut off the funding and her network collapses." Madison pulled up encrypted files she'd saved before her arrest. Eleanor always had 3 levels of financial protection. The first was the obvious accounts; those are frozen. The second was the cryptocurrency conversions; you're tracking those. But the third... She paused, conflicted. "Madison people's lives are at stake," I pressed. "The third is personal, hidden in plain sight. She told me once that the best place to hide money was where no one would think to look, because it was too sentimental to be criminal." "Meaning?" Madison took a shaky breath. "Dad's grave. She had it renovated 5 years ago, claimed it was about honoring his memory. But I think she built something into it. A safe, maybe, or access point to accounts. She visited monthly, always alone, always carrying that oversized purse. The idea of Eleanor desecrating our father's grave for criminal purposes shouldn't have shocked me after everything else. But it did. There seemed to be no bottom to her depravity. Within an hour, we had a warrant and were standing in Arlington Memorial Gardens. The groundskeeper led us to a pristine marble monument that looked more like a small mausoleum than a typical grave marker. Thomas Montgomery's name was etched in gold, along with the inscription, "Beloved husband and father," words that dripped with Eleanor's hypocrisy. The FBI's technical team scanned the structure quickly, finding anomalies. Behind a false panel in the base, they discovered a sophisticated safe containing not just money, but documents, account numbers, passwords, contact information for her entire criminal network. "My God," Sullivan breathed as we cataloged the contents. She turned her husband's grave into a criminal command center. Among the documents, I found something that made my blood run cold. Detailed dossiers on Madison and me going back years. Every relationship, every friend, every vulnerability documented with clinical precision. Derek's name appeared frequently, his investigation into Eleanor tracked alongside their manipulation of our relationship. "She knew," I said numbly. "She knew about Derek's investigation before I ever met him." Derek, reading over my shoulder, went pale. "The conference where we met, she orchestrated it. Made sure we'd both be there, probably even arranged for us to be seated near each other at that dinner." Madison laughed bitterly. "Classic Eleanor. She couldn't stop your investigation, Derek, so she created a situation where it would be compromised by personal involvement. If you published, she'd claim bias. If you didn't, she'd avoid exposure." But Eleanor had underestimated one thing: genuine emotion. What had started as her manipulation had become real love, strong enough to survive her attempts to weaponize it. Using the information from the grave safe, we began dismantling Eleanor's network with surgical precision. Accounts were frozen mid-transfer. Safe houses were raided. Associates found themselves arrested before they could carry out attacks on witnesses. Yet Eleanor adapted quickly. From her hospital bed, she gave an interview to a sympathetic journalist, painting herself as a dying woman, persecuted by ungrateful children. She revealed selective truths. Yes, she'd made mistakes in business, but only to provide for her daughters. Yes, she'd been hard on them, but what single mother wasn't? The suicide attempt, she claimed, came from the unbearable pain of their betrayal. "She's good," Derek admitted, watching the interview, playing the victim while subtle, threatening her real victims. "There." Madison pointed to Eleanor's hands in the video. "She's tapping. It looks random, but it's not. It's Morse code." We slowed the footage, translating her finger movements. A message emerged: Asset Romeo, execute Juliet Protocol. What's Juliet Protocol? Sullivan demanded. Madison went white. It's her nuclear option. If Juliet Protocol is activated... She grabbed her laptop fingers, flying across keys. We need to evacuate the courthouse now. What are you talking about? Juliet Protocol is a bomb threat. Not real, but credible enough to disrupt. She used it once before to delay an audit. But if she's activating it now during her case... Understanding dawned horribly. A bomb threat during Eleanor's trial would cause chaos. Evidence would be moved, security protocols disrupted. In the confusion, key witnesses could disappear or evidence could be contaminated. We raced against time, alerting courthouse security while trying to trace Asset Romeo. The FBI's databases churned through possibilities, finally identifying a likely candidate, a former military explosives expert who'd been dishonorably discharged and had connections to Eleanor's network. The takedown happened just as he was placing a suspicious package near the courthouse. Inside, investigators found not a bomb, but an incredibly sophisticated fake, real enough to fool initial inspections, causing maximum disruption without actual danger. Classic Eleanor creating chaos while maintaining plausible deniability. With Romeo in custody and squealing for a deal more of Eleanor's contingencies unraveled, we discovered she'd prepared for this day like a general planning for war. False flag operations, character assassination campaigns, even a body double prepared to help her escape if she'd made bail. But the most chilling discovery came from her personal files. A document titled Endgame outlined her final protocol. If conviction seemed certain, if all other options failed, she had one last card to play a dead man's switch connected to a massive data dump. Every crime committed by everyone in her network, every bribe taken, every cover-up orchestrated, mutually assured destruction on a grand scale. She'd burn down half of Washington to avoid prison, Madison said quietly, and she'd enjoy watching it burn. Then we make sure she can't, I replied. We find that switch and disable it before she can use it. The hunt for Eleanor's doomsday weapon led us through a labyrinth of digital breadcrumbs and human assets. Each person we arrested revealed another layer. Each account we froze exposed another connection. Eleanor had built her empire over decades, but we were dismantling it in days. As dawn broke over Washington, we stood exhausted but victorious. Eleanor's network was in ruins, her assets frozen, her witnesses protected. The grave safe had been her undoing, the hubris of hiding criminal evidence in her victim's memorial. But Eleanor herself remained unbroken. From her hospital bed, she watched her empire crumble with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd always known this day might come. She'd prepared for defeat as thoroughly as she'd planned for victory. Why doesn't she look worried? Madison asked, studying surveillance footage of Eleanor. We've destroyed everything she built. Because she knows something we don't, I realized. She's still playing a game we haven't figured out. The hunt had been successful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still dancing to Eleanor's tune. She'd spent a lifetime manipulating people, planning for every contingency. Even facing life in prison, she projected confidence. What final card did Eleanor Montgomery have left to play, and would we discover it in time to stop her? The hunt was ending, but the war was far from over. The federal courthouse in downtown D.C. became a fortress on the first day of Eleanor Montgomery's trial. Media trucks lined every available space, their satellite dishes, creating a steel forest against the morning sky. Protesters and supporters faced off behind police barriers, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Inside courtroom 7. I sat in the witness section, my testimony scheduled for day 3. Madison sat beside me, flanked by federal marshals, a defendant turned state's witness, her own trials pending. Derek occupied the press section, his fingers flying across his laptop as he documented every moment. Eleanor entered in a wheelchair she didn't need, playing the part of a frail woman broken by her daughter's betrayal. She wore a conservative gray suit, her hair styled simply, every detail calculated to present a sympathetic image. But her eyes remained sharp as a predator's, scanning the room and cataloging every face. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Martha Chen," the bailiff announced. Judge Chen, a former prosecutor with a reputation for seeing through manipulation, took her seat. Eleanor's team had fought desperately to get her removed, claiming bias, but their motions had failed. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney James Harrison, opened with devastating simplicity. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Eleanor Montgomery built an empire on graves. Her husband, her mother-in-law, 5 business associates, all dead because they threatened her ambitions. This is not a case about a mother betrayed by ungrateful daughters. This is about a serial killer who used financial crime as her weapon." Eleanor's lead attorney, Marcus Fitzgerald, painted a different picture. Mrs. Montgomery is a successful businesswoman who made enemies through her achievements. Her daughters, facing their own criminal investigations, conspired to frame her for their crimes. This trial is about greed, jealousy, and the ultimate betrayal: children destroying their mother for money. The first week brought a parade of financial experts dissecting Eleanor's fraudulent empire. Charts showed money flowing through shell companies like blood through veins. Each transaction, another theft, another life destroyed. The jury's faces grew increasingly grim as the scope became clear. Then came the victims. Patricia Chen testified about her career destroyed by Eleanor's blackmail. Thomas Brennan Jr. spoke of growing up without a father, murdered for asking questions. One by one, they painted a portrait of a woman who viewed human lives as obstacles to be removed. On day 8, it was Madison's turn. My sister walked to the witness stand like someone approaching their execution. She'd lost weight during the preparation, her designer clothes replaced by a simple black dress that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "State your name for the record," Harrison began. "Madison Elizabeth Montgomery." "What is your relationship to the defendant?" Madison looked directly at Eleanor for the first time since entering. "She's my mother and my co-conspirator, and the woman who destroyed everything good in my life." For 6 hours, Madison laid bare every crime, every manipulation, every moment of their twisted relationship. She spoke of being groomed from childhood to be Eleanor's weapon, of the gradual realization that her success was built on others' destruction, of the moment she decided to stop being complicit. "Did you participate willingly in these crimes?" Harrison asked. "Yes," Madison said clearly. "At first because I didn't understand what they were, then because I was afraid, eventually because I was good at it. I take full responsibility for my actions." Fitzgerald's cross-examination was brutal. He painted Madison as the true mastermind, a daughter setting up her mother to take the fall. But Madison didn't waver, admitting to every crime while maintaining that Eleanor had been the architect. "You expect this jury to believe that you, with your Harvard MBA and celebrated business acumen, were just a puppet," Fitzgerald sneered. "I expect them to believe the evidence," Madison replied. "Every document, every recording, every witness who's testified. Yes, I was complicit. Yes, I committed crimes. But I was a weapon. Eleanor was the one who aimed and fired me." On day 10, I took the stand. Unlike Madison, I had no crimes to confess, but my testimony was crucial to establishing Eleanor's pattern of control and manipulation. I spoke of a childhood divided between sisters, of Eleanor's calculated cruelty, of discovering the investigation that had led to this moment. "Agent Montgomery," Harrison asked, "why did you accept the case against your own sister's company?" "Because I took an oath to pursue justice regardless of personal cost," I answered. "Because victims deserve truth more than I deserve family comfort, and because I suspected what I later confirmed, that my mother had been committing crimes my entire life." Fitzgerald attacked my credibility, suggesting I'd manufactured evidence out of jealousy. He played the edited video of the gala confrontation, repeatedly trying to paint me as unstable. But I remained calm, methodically refuting each accusation with facts and evidence. "Isn't it true that you've always resented your sister's success?" he pressed. "I resented the crimes that created it," I corrected, "just as I resent the murders that protected it. My personal feelings don't change the fact that Eleanor Montgomery is a serial killer who happened to use financial fraud as her preferred weapon." The most dramatic moment came when Eleanor herself chose to testify. Against her lawyer's advice, she took the stand on day 15, projecting wounded dignity as she settled into the witness chair. "Mrs. Montgomery," her lawyer began gently, "tell us about your relationship with your daughters." Eleanor's performance was masterful. She painted herself as a struggling single mother who'd built a business to provide for her children. Every crime was reframed as protection, every murder as a tragic accident or misunderstanding. She wept at carefully calculated moments, her voice breaking as she described her daughter's betrayal. "I gave them everything," she said, dabbing at her eyes. "The best schools, every opportunity, a life of privilege, and they repay me with these monstrous accusations." But Harrison's cross-examination revealed the Eleanor I knew. He pressed her about specific financial transactions, forcing her to confront documents bearing her signature. Her composure cracked as he presented evidence after evidence, each one chipping away at her carefully constructed narrative. "This document shows you transferring money from Thomas Montgomery's life insurance into an account used to bribe Judge Morrison. How do you explain that?" "I don't recall that transaction." "You don't recall stealing your dead husband's life insurance to corrupt a judge?" "Objection!" Fitzgerald shouted. "Sustained," Judge Chen ruled. "Rephrase, Mr. Harrison." But the damage was done. Eleanor's mask was slipping, revealing the calculating predator beneath. When Harrison presented the recording from the grave safe, Eleanor discussing Thomas's murder with chilling casualness, the courtroom gasped. "That's been edited," Eleanor insisted, taken out of context. "The FBI's audio experts confirm it's authentic and unedited. Should we play it again?" "No." Eleanor's control finally shattered. "You don't understand. Thomas was going to destroy everything. He was weak, pathetic, ready to throw away our daughters' futures for his precious principles. I did what any mother would do. I protected my children." The admission hung in the air like a confession. Even Fitzgerald looked stunned. "So you admit to killing Thomas Montgomery?" Harrison pressed. Eleanor's eyes blazed with the fury I'd seen that night at the gala. "I admit to being a mother who refused to let anyone, including their father, limit my daughter's potential. If that's a crime, then yes, I'm guilty. But everything I did for them." "You did it for yourself," I said quietly from the gallery, breaking protocol. Judge Chen gavelled for order, but my words had carried. Eleanor's gaze locked onto mine. "You were always so righteous, Alberta, so pure. But you benefited too. Your education, your career, your precious integrity, all paid for with money I earned while you sat in judgment. Money you stole, people you killed, lives you destroyed." I stood, ignoring the bailiff's approach. "You didn't protect us, Eleanor. You used us. Madison as your weapon, me as your eventual scapegoat. We were never daughters to you. We were tools." "Sit down, Agent Montgomery," Judge Chen ordered, but her tone was gentle. Eleanor's facade crumbled entirely. "Tools, I made Madison extraordinary. I would have made you extraordinary too if you'd let me. But you chose mediocrity. You chose to be nothing." "I chose to be honest," I replied, "which is why I'm sitting here while you're heading to prison." The rest of Eleanor's testimony devolved into bitter recriminations and barely veiled threats. She ranted about ungrateful children, corrupt systems, and the unfairness of being punished for ambition. By the time she left the stand, any sympathy the jury might have felt had evaporated. The trial continued for another week with forensic experts, financial analysts, and character witnesses painting an increasingly damning picture. Eleanor's defense team fought valiantly, but the evidence was overwhelming. Documents, recordings, witness testimony, decades of crimes meticulously exposed. During closing arguments, Harrison delivered the final blow. Eleanor Montgomery wants you to believe she's a victim, but victims don't leave a trail of bodies. Victims don't steal millions. Victims don't orchestrate their own daughter's destruction. She is not a mother wronged, she is a predator exposed, and predators belong in cages. Fitzgerald made one last attempt to salvage the case, arguing reasonable doubt and conspiracy, but his heart wasn't in it. Even he seemed to realize that Eleanor's own testimony had sealed her fate. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours, remarkably quick for such a complex case. As we filed back into the courtroom for the verdict, Eleanor sat perfectly still, her face a mask of cold dignity. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Chen asked. "We have, Your Honor." "On the count of murder in the first degree of Thomas Montgomery, how do you find guilty?" Eleanor didn't flinch as the verdicts rolled in. Guilty of murder, guilty of racketeering, guilty of fraud, guilty on all 47 counts. Each pronouncement another bar in the cage that would hold her for the rest of her life. Madison wept silently beside me. Despite everything, hearing our mother condemned as a murderer carried a weight that transcended relief. We were free of her, but we were also orphaned by truth. Our father murdered our mother, a monster. Eleanor Montgomery. Judge Chen intoned, "You have been found guilty of crimes that shock the conscience. You murdered your husband. You destroyed countless lives through fraud. You corrupted institutions meant to protect the innocent. Most unforgivably, you perverted the sacred bond between mother and child, turning your daughters into tools for your criminal ambitions." She paused, looking directly at Eleanor. "I sentence you to life in prison, without the possibility of parole sentences to run consecutively for each murder conviction. You will die in custody as alone as you forced your victims to die." Eleanor finally reacted, a small smile playing at her lips. "Your Honor, may I make a statement?" "Briefly." Eleanor stood, turning not to the judge but to Madison and me. "My daughters think they've won, but I made them. Every success Alberta achieves, every breath Madison takes, it all comes from me. They can lock me away, but they can't lock away the truth. They are my creations, my legacy. And someday they'll realize that becoming me is their only path to survival." "Remove the defendant," Judge Chen ordered. As marshals led Eleanor away, she maintained eye contact with us until the last moment. No remorse, no acknowledgement of guilt, just the cold satisfaction of a predator who'd marked her prey. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy reached fever pitch. Harrison gave a brief statement about justice being served. Fitzgerald slipped away without comment, but the cameras focused on Madison and me, the daughters who'd brought down their own mother. "We have no statement," I said firmly. "Today isn't about us. It's about Eleanor's victims finally receiving justice." But one reporter shouted a question that stopped me cold. "What about your mother's final threat about you becoming like her?" I looked at Madison, seeing my own fears reflected in her eyes. Eleanor's words would haunt us, a poison pill delivered with her last breath of freedom. Were we her creations? Would her corruption eventually surface in us? "We are not our mother," I said finally. "We're the ones who stopped her. That's our legacy, not her crimes, but our choice to end them." As we walked away from the courthouse, Madison slipped her hand into mine. Two sisters finally free, but forever marked by the woman who'd given us life while trying to steal our souls. The reckoning was complete. Eleanor Montgomery would die in prison, her empire in ruins, her victims vindicated. But her final words lingered like a curse, reminding us that DNA carries more than physical traits. We were Eleanor Montgomery's daughters. The question now was, who would we choose to become? The pristine walls of ADX Florence, America's most secure federal prison, would be Eleanor Montgomery's final home. As news of her transfer spread, I sat in my Arlington apartment, my real one, not the FBI safe house, trying to process the strange emptiness that followed victory. Madison had been sentenced the week after Eleanor's trial. Thanks to her cooperation and genuine remorse, she received 8 years, with possibility of parole in 5. It was merciful compared to what she could have faced, but it was still prison, still consequence. "You did the right thing," Derek said, setting a cup of tea beside me. "We've been trying to rebuild our relationship after the revelation about his investigation. Trust came harder now, but love remained. Did I stared at the file in my lap, victim impact statements from Eleanor's crimes. 43 families destroyed, millions stolen, 7 confirmed murders. How is any of this right? "You stopped her. That's what's right." My phone buzzed. Robert Sullivan, now deputy director after his work on the case, led to a promotion. "Alberta, we need you to see something. Can you come to headquarters?" An hour later, I stood in a conference room facing a wall of documents. Financial records, property deeds, international transactions, all discovered in the aftermath of Eleanor's conviction. "Your mother had resources we're still uncovering," Sullivan explained. "Hidden assets, properties under false names, investments in legitimate businesses. The total value is approaching $200 million. Freeze it all. Use it for victim compensation." That's why I called. He handed me a document. "This was filed yesterday. Eleanor is attempting to transfer all assets to a trust. The beneficiaries are you and Madison." I stared at the papers, seeing Eleanor's signature alongside her prison identification number. Even from maximum security, she was trying to control us. "She can't do that from prison," I protested. "Actually, she can. Until the assets are formally seized through civil forfeiture, they're technically still hers. And this particular trust was established years ago, we just didn't know about it." Sullivan studied my face. "If you accept, you and Madison would inherit everything upon her death." "Blood money." I pushed the papers away. "I don't want a cent." "That's what I assumed. But there's a complication." He showed me another document. "The trust has a provision. If you refuse the inheritance, it defaults to Eleanor's designated alternate beneficiaries." I read the list, my blood cooling. Harold Blackwood, Marcus Fitzgerald, a dozen other names from Eleanor's criminal network, people who'd helped her kill and steal. She's forcing us to choose, I realized. Take the blood money or let it fund more crime. Essentially, yes, one final manipulation from federal prison. That evening, I drove to the minimum security facility where Madison was serving her sentence. The visiting room was sparse but clean, filled with women in khaki uniforms, trying to maintain connections to the outside world. Madison looked thinner but clearer somehow, as if prison had burned away Eleanor's influence. "Hey, sis." "Hey." I sat across from her, the plastic table between us feeling like an ocean. "How are you?" "Learning who I am without a champagne flute in my hand." She attempted a smile. "The therapy helps. Finally talking to someone who isn't trying to manipulate me or who I'm not trying to manipulate." I told her about the trust, watched her process Eleanor's final move. Madison laughed, but it was bitter. Of course. She couldn't just go to prison. She had to leave one more trap. "What do we do?" "We take it." Madison's voice was firm. "We take every penny and use it to rebuild the lives she destroyed. Create a foundation fund, financial crime investigations, support the families she devastated. Turn her blood money into something clean. Can we everything she touched turned poison? Then will be the antidote." Madison leaned forward. "Alberta, she wins if we refuse. Those assets go to people who'll use them to hurt others. But if we accept, we can transform her legacy of destruction into one of restoration." Over the following months, that's exactly what we did. The Montgomery Justice Foundation was established with Eleanor's assets dedicated to supporting victims of financial crimes and funding investigations into white-collar criminals. Every dollar she'd stolen was returned to the community she'd terrorized. I left the FBI unable to continue investigations that now felt too personal. Instead, I became the Foundation's director, using my expertise to identify victims and verify claims. Derek joined our board, his investigative skills helping track down people Eleanor had destroyed who'd never come forward. Madison from prison became our strategic advisor. Her inside knowledge of financial manipulation proved invaluable in recognizing victim patterns. She spent her days studying law and finance, preparing for the day she could actively help repair the damage she'd participated in. The work was exhausting but healing. Every family helped, every victim compensated, felt like extracting another drop of poison from our bloodstream. We met widows who'd lost everything, children whose college funds had vanished, small business owners whose dreams had been crushed under Eleanor's ambitions. 1 year after Eleanor's conviction, I received a letter from ADX Florence. Her handwriting was still perfectly controlled, each word precisely formed. My dearest daughters, I hear you've given away my money. How predictably noble. But you can't give away what you are. Every choice you make, every person you help, it all stems from skills I taught you. Alberta's eye for detail. Madison's understanding of systems I created those abilities. You think you're erasing me, but you're proving me right. You're using my methods, just inverting the purpose, the foundation you built. It's structured exactly like my shell companies, just legally. The investigations you fund. They use techniques I pioneered. You are my legacy, whether distributing money or taking it. Every success proves I made you extraordinary. All my love, Mother. I burned the letter, but her words had already done their damage. Was she right? Were we just Eleanor Montgomery's daughters playing at redemption while using her tools? You're nothing like her, Derek said that night, holding me as I cried. She destroyed, you rebuild. She took choices away, you restore them. The tools don't matter, the intention does. Madison, when I told her about the letter during our next visit, was philosophical. Maybe she's partially right. Maybe we are using what she taught us. So what a knife can kill or heal depending on whether you're a murderer or surgeon. We're choosing surgery. The foundation grew, expanding beyond financial crimes to support broader justice initiatives. We funded legal aid for those who couldn't afford representation, supported legislation to close loopholes Eleanor had exploited, created educational programs about financial literacy and fraud prevention. 3 years into Madison's sentence, she was approved for a rehabilitation program that allowed her to work with the foundation during days while returning to minimum security at night. Seeing her in professional clothes again teaching seminars on recognizing financial fraud was surreal but powerful. I can't undo what I did, she told one audience of potential victims, but I can teach you to recognize the warning signs I helped create. Every person who avoids fraud because of what I share is a small redemption. Eleanor wrote occasionally, each letter an attempt to maintain psychological control. We stopped reading them, filing them sealed with authorities in case they contained threats or criminal information. She was a ghost, haunting our peripheral vision, never fully exercised, but no longer controlling our actions. 5 years after the trial, Patricia called with news. She's sick, cancer. The doctors give her 6 months. I felt nothing at first. Then a strange grief, not for Eleanor, but for the mother we'd never had, the family that had never existed. Madison and I met that evening, sharing wine and silence. Do we visit? Madison asked eventually. I don't know. Do we owe her that? We don't owe her anything. Madison stared at her glass. But maybe we owe ourselves closure. We never got the chance to decide. Eleanor Montgomery died 2 weeks later alone in her cell, having refused treatment that might have extended her life. The official cause was cancer, but I wondered if she'd simply decided that life without control wasn't worth living. Her funeral was sparse. Madison and me, Patricia, and surprisingly a few former victims who came not to mourn, but to confirm she was truly gone. We buried her beside the father she'd murdered, his grave restored to simple dignity after the criminal modifications were removed. She was a monster, I said over her grave. But she was our monster. And maybe that's the most tragic part, that someone capable of creating life was so devoted to destroying it. Madison took my hand. We survived her. That's what matters. We survived, and we chose to be different. The aftermath of Eleanor's verdict stretched far beyond her imprisonment and death. Her crimes had created ripples that would last generations. But Madison and I had chosen to create different ripples, ones that healed rather than harmed. The Montgomery Justice Foundation continued to grow, eventually becoming one of the nation's leading organizations for financial crime victims. Madison, released after serving 4 years, joined as co-director, her redemption arc complete, but her penance ongoing. We were Eleanor Montgomery's daughters. That would never change. But we were also ourselves, flawed, scarred, but choosing every day to be better than our origin. Her legacy wasn't just the crimes she'd committed, but the choices we made in response. The verdict's aftermath was a lifetime of work, turning blood money into hope, corruption into justice, sisters divided into family reunited. Eleanor had been wrong about one thing: we weren't her creations. We were her survivors, and that made all the difference. 1 year after Eleanor's funeral, on a crisp October morning, I stood in the renovated offices of the Montgomery Justice Foundation. Sunlight streamed through windows that had once belonged to one of Eleanor's shell companies, now transformed into a beacon of hope for financial crime victims. The quarterly reports. Madison said, entering with a stack of files. She wore a simple blue dress, her appearance professional, but understated a far cry from the designer suits of her Celestial Innovations days. We've helped recover $12 million in stolen assets this quarter alone. And prevented how much more from being stolen? I asked, reviewing our fraud education program statistics. Impossible to calculate, but our seminars have reached over 50,000 people. That's 50,000 potential victims who now know the warning signs. She smiled, and it reached her eyes in a way Eleanor's never had. Dad would be proud. We'd started invoking our father's memory more often, reclaiming him from Eleanor's shadow. His portrait hung in our main conference room, not the formal photo Eleanor had displayed, but a candid shot Patricia found of him laughing at a family picnic, full of the warmth Eleanor had extinguished. Speaking of family, Madison continued, Derek called. He'll be late to dinner. Breaking news about another financial scandal. Derek and I had married 6 months ago in a small ceremony at the courthouse, where Eleanor was convicted, transforming a place of judgment into one of joy. He'd won his second Pulitzer for the series on Eleanor's crimes and used the platform to advocate for financial justice reform. And Marcus. I asked about Madison's partner, a fellow redemption story, a former white-collar criminal turned victims' rights attorney. Picking up groceries, he insists on cooking tonight. Madison's expression softened. He wants to practice before the baby comes. My sister was 4 months pregnant, a development that had sparked long conversations about breaking generational cycles. How are you feeling about that? Terrified, she admitted. What if Eleanor was right? What if her poison runs too deep? What if I become... You won't. I interrupted the spiral I knew too well. You're aware you're in therapy, you're surrounded by people who'll keep you honest. Your child will know love without manipulation, success, without crime, family without fear. A knock interrupted us. Patricia entered now, a regular volunteer at the foundation. The Wilson family is here for their appointment. The Wilsons were typical of our clients, an elderly couple whose retirement savings had been drained by a fraudster, using methods eerily similar to Eleanor's. We spent the morning helping them navigate the recovery process, connecting them with pro bono legal services and financial counseling. You saved our lives, Mrs. Wilson said tearfully as they prepared to leave. We thought we'd lost everything. You saved yourselves by coming forward, Madison corrected gently. We just helped point the way. After they left, I found myself in the Foundation's memorial room, a quiet space dedicated to victims of financial crimes. Photos lined the walls, Thomas Brennan, our grandmother, our father, dozens of others whose lives had been cut short by greed. But alongside the photos of loss were images of recovery. Families reunited, businesses rebuilt, justice served. "You okay?" Madison joined me studying our father's photo. "Thinking about cycles," I admitted. Eleanor inherited nothing but middle-class respectability and turned it into a criminal empire. We inherited a criminal empire and turned it into this. What will the next generation inherit? Choices, Madison said simply. The ability to choose who they want to be without manipulation or predetermination. That's the real legacy. That evening, our chosen family gathered for dinner at the row house Derek and I had bought with my FBI pension. Nothing fancy, but honestly earned. Patricia bustled in the kitchen while Marcus and Derek debated financial reform policy. Madison helped me set the table with mismatched dishes that somehow felt more valuable than Eleanor's china had ever been. "A toast," Derek proposed once everyone was seated, "to Albert's promotion to National Director of Victim Services." I blushed as glasses raised. The Department of Justice had offered me the position to help establish nationwide standards for financial crime victim support, using our foundation as the model. And to Madison's law school acceptance, I added, turning the attention to my sister. She'd been accepted to Georgetown's evening program, planning to become a victims' rights attorney. 40 years old and starting over. She laughed. "But it feels right." "To starting over," Patricia echoed, "to choosing who we become." As we ate and laughed and shared stories, I thought about family, not the twisted version Eleanor had created, but this chosen bonds forged through trial love, given freely without manipulation, support offered without strings. Later, as Derek and I cleaned dishes, he shared his latest investigation. "I'm tracking a new financial fraud network, similar patterns to Eleanor's early work. Need help?" I offered, feeling the familiar pull of justice work. "Always." He kissed me gently. "Partners in all things." Madison and Marcus left around 10, Patricia following soon after. The house felt peacefully quiet, so different from the tense silences of our childhood home. I stood at the window watching the streetlights cast pools of warmth in the darkness. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Thank you for believing I could be better, for giving me the chance to prove it. Love you, sis." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too. See you at tomorrow's board meeting." The Montgomery name would always carry weight in Washington, but we'd transformed its meaning. Where once it meant fear and corruption, now it stood for justice and redemption. We'd taken Eleanor's tools, attention to detail, understanding of systems, strategic thinking, and repurposed them for healing. 3 months later, at the Foundation's annual gala, I stood before a room of supporters, survivors, and advocates. The Grandview Hotel had offered their ballroom the same space where Eleanor's empire had crumbled, but we'd chosen a community center, instead, a place built on authentic foundations. 5 years ago, my mother was arrested in front of Washington's elite. I began my speech. Today, we gather not to celebrate power, but to honor resilience. Every person in this room has been touched by financial crime, as victims, advocates, or in my family's case, as perpetrators seeking redemption. I found Madison in the crowd, her hand resting on her growing belly, Marcus beside her with quiet pride. Eleanor Montgomery believed people were tools to be used and discarded. She was wrong. People are not tools. They're miracles of resilience capable of surviving the worst betrayals and choosing to trust again. You've taught us that. Your courage in coming forward, sharing your stories, rebuilding your lives, you've shown us what real strength looks like. The audience applauded, but I wasn't finished. My sister and I were raised by a monster who wore the mask of a mother. We could have let that define us, poison us, limit us. Instead, we chose to let it refine us. Every day we choose to be better than our origin, and every day you give us the privilege of helping in your journey toward justice and healing. Tonight I want to announce the Thomas Montgomery Memorial Scholarship, funded by anonymous donors who wish to honor my father's memory by supporting children who've lost parents to violent crime. Because healing happens not just through justice, but through opportunity. As I left the podium, I was surrounded by survivors sharing their stories, their progress, their hope. Madison joined me, and together we listened, learned, and offered what support we could. Near midnight, as the gala wound down, we stood outside looking at the stars, something we'd never done as children, too focused on Eleanor's demands to notice the sky. "Think she knew?" Madison asked quietly. "At the end, do you think Eleanor understood what she'd lost?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm not sure she was capable of understanding love without possession success, without destruction. But maybe that's the saddest part. She had 2 daughters who could have loved her, and she chose control instead." "Her loss," Madison said firmly, "our gain." A year later, Madison graduated law school with honors while balancing motherhood and foundation work. Her daughter Sarah, named for the grandmother we'd never really known, took her first steps in the foundation offices, surrounded by people choosing redemption over revenge. I accepted the Department of Justice position, working to establish national standards that would prevent future Eleanor Montgomerys from operating in shadows. Derek's investigations continued to expose financial predators, each article a small victory against corruption. Patricia published a memoir about surviving Eleanor, donating proceeds to the foundation. Marcus opened a legal clinic for financial crime victims. Our circle of healing expanded, daily ripples of redemption, spreading far beyond what Eleanor's crimes had ever reached. 10 years after that night at the gala, I stood again at our father's grave, this time, with Madison, her children, Derek, and our extended chosen family. We'd established a tradition of visiting on his birthday, celebrating the man he'd been, rather than mourning how he'd died. "Hi, Dad," Madison said softly, placing fresh flowers by his headstone. "We wanted you to meet your grandchildren. Sarah's 8 now, and Thomas just turned 5. They know all about you, the real you, not Eleanor's version." Sarah stepped forward, a serious child with Madison's eyes and our father's gentle smile. "Grandpa, Mom says you like jazz. I'm learning saxophone. Maybe I can play for you sometime." Little Thomas added his contribution. "We help people now, like superheroes, but with paperwork." Everyone laughed, the sound bright and healing in the cemetery's peace. We shared stories, memories, dreams for the future. The children played among the headstones, transforming a place of death into one of life. As we prepared to leave, I noticed a small plaque someone had placed near Eleanor's grave. "Here lies a lesson in how not to live." I didn't know who'd put it there. Maybe a victim, maybe a philosopher, maybe just someone who understood that even monsters could teach through negative example. "Ready?" Derek asked, taking my hand. I looked around at my family blood and chosen scarred but whole proof that love could triumph over manipulation. Madison caught my eye and smiled her face, reflecting the same peace I felt. "Ready," I confirmed. We walked away together, leaving the past buried while carrying its lessons forward. The Montgomery legacy continued, not Eleanor's empire of lies, but our foundation of truth. Not her isolation, but our community. Not her hunger for control, but our commitment to justice. In the end, that was our new beginning, the daily choice to be better than where we came from, to heal rather than harm, to love rather than manipulate. Eleanor had given us life, then tried to steal it back. But we'd survived, thrived, and transformed her poison into medicine for others. The cycle was broken. The new beginning was now. And every day, we chose to make it better. To everyone watching who's ever felt trapped by family expectations or crushed by someone else's ambitions, I said, looking directly into Derek's camera as he filmed one final segment, "You are not defined by the worst things done to you. You are not limited by the crimes of those who came before. You have the power to choose who you become." That's the most important lesson Eleanor Montgomery never learned, and the one my sister and I live by every day. I paused, thinking of all the survivors we'd met, all the lives touched by our foundation's work. So here's my question for you. What will you choose to do with your pain? Will you let it define you, or will you transform it into purpose? If Madison and I could turn our mother's criminal empire into a force for justice, what transformation is waiting in your own story? Thank you for following our journey. If you or someone you know has been affected by financial crime, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out to law enforcement, to victim services, to organizations like ours. You deserve justice, and you deserve healing. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to help others find it. Share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone. And comment below with your own thoughts on breaking negative cycles. Your insights might be exactly what another survivor needs to hear. From the Montgomery Justice Foundation and from our family to yours, remember you are stronger than those who tried to break you. Choose healing. Choose justice. Choose hope. The camera light blinked off and Derek lowered his equipment. "Perfect," he said softly. Madison squeezed my shoulder. "Think it'll help people?" "If it helps even one person find the courage to escape their own Eleanor," I replied, "then it's worth it." As we packed up the equipment, Sarah and Thomas ran over full of energy and innocence. They would grow up knowing their family's story not as a burden, but as a reminder that people can change, that justice is possible, that love is stronger than manipulation. "Ice cream," Marcus suggested, gathering his family. And so we walked into our future, imperfect but honest, scarred but whole proof that even the darkest stories can end in light. Eleanor Montgomery had tried to write our ending in blood and lies. Instead, we'd written our own, in truth and redemption. The new beginning wasn't a single moment, it was every choice every day to be better than our beginning. And that was a legacy worth leaving.